Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show, and I am glad that all of you are here with me on this show. What is it? Thursday morning? It's an early Thursday morning, and I hope you guys can hear me loud and clearly. I am dragging a bit of ass this morning, but I am here nonetheless, and I'm glad that you could be here with me as I drag ass. I don't know what you guys are doing this morning, whether you're on your work, whether you're at home, whether you're taking your dogs out, whatever you're doing this morning. I appreciate you being here with me and allowing me to be the voice in your ear. A voice that is apparently so soothing, so subversive that they had to eliminate me from the airwaves here in DC. Yes, they did. The federal government got involved, passed sanctions on the company to which I was working with, in which case that company was destroyed. Nevertheless, you can destroy the company, you can't necessarily destroy the voice, and that voice remains. Look, if you guys dig this content that I've been putting down, I come here from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. Not to mention, I pop in at all sorts of time of the day or night. I tend to be an insomniac, so I could be here pretty much at any hour. So definitely like it, share it, subscribe to it. On top of subscribing to it, hit the notification bell if you really dig the content. And if you really find yourself coming here often, consider supporting the content through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chats. But any chat or sticker will be read. Don't be sexist, racist, bigoted, or anything like that, but you will get your sticker read even if you're taking the piss out of me about it. A bit of interesting news that has taken place over the last few days. Donald Trump has been putting out a flurry of people who's going to be in his administration. And as you know, people are often, they want this list. They want to know this list. Because truth be told, typically people are policy. Meaning the person you put in a particular position gives some idea, some credence to what you intend to do once you yourself get into that position. After all, it would be kind of weird if you have a position of peaceniks. You know, how do we make peace around the world? How do we extend a hand as opposed to raising a fist? And then you put John Bolton in that position. That would be very weird. What are you putting John Bolton in a position that you're supposed to be petting puppies? So you get this sense, right? You typically put people in a position that give some context to what you, as the leader, intend to do abroad, meaning in general, but specifically in that particular area to which you're putting that person. So Donald Trump has shaken up things, to put it mildly, with some of his cabinet appointments, and I'm going to get into some of those a bit later in the show. Malik Abdul is going to be joining me at 8:15 today. So is Jennifer Perlman. Both of them are really, really good people. Both of them have really good voices on this stuff. Malik is going to be giving the right-wing perspective, basically what is the Trump world thinking and people in the Republican Party thinking. Jen is going to get the lefty perspective, the progressive perspective. Because truth be told, Democratic Party, I don't consider it a progressive party, even though they use the term often. And I don't even like the term at this point because I think it's been so bastardized. All things being equal, I just consider myself to be a lefty. And I say that specifically from the standpoint of the economic left. I'm not a fan of this woke stuff. I think this stuff gets conflated with lefty policy. And I think they use that stuff of identity or that stuff of wokeness in order to ignore real economic realities. And then when they lose a race, the first thing they say is, well, we got, too entwined with the left. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You didn't. Don't worry, you didn't. I mean, again, Kamala Harris ran on transnational gangs. Kamala Harris ran around the country with Liz Cheney. These are not things that are indicative of the left. These are not even things indicative of the Democratic Party in general. As milquetoast, weak, and impotent as that party is, those are not even things that are tantamount to the main Democratic Party. So you can't turn around after losing an election where you ran like that and say, well, clearly the left has too much power in this process. Too much power. You can't do that. And yet, that's what some of them are doing. I came to a fascinating appraisal yesterday. I was slightly stoned. And I forget what I was doing, but I remember it hit me because somehow I got into this thought like, how are these people freaking out like this? Meaning, when I'm watching some of the people in media, for example, if you watch Joyanne Reid fully believes this, even though to me it's shocking. If I accept for the moment that she really believes what she's saying here, then I have to come to a certain assessment. This is Joyanne Reid. Listen to what she says here.
And I think it's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Mm-hmm. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed them. She had.
Hell, man, Queen Latifah even endorsed. Queen Latifah. She even endorsed. And she don't endorse nobody. And if Latifah gets involved, and God damn it, it's going well. What if she really believes that? Meaning, look, I know on the left, we look at that stuff and like, okay, these people are out of their minds. But what if you dwell in the moment for a bit, what if she legitimately believes that? What if all of those people that have been freaking out and seemingly completely and utterly bewildered, be it the people on The View, be it the people on MSNBC, what if, for the moment, their shock and awe is legitimate? Then what would it mean? What does it mean? So when you get Kamala Harris going around with Liz Cheney, and they're fighting on stuff like this.
And finally,
that's not it.
I tell people often, I spend a lot of time working on national security issues, and when people that I know in the Republican Party tell me they might be considering voting for Trump from a national security perspective, I ask them, go look at his national security policies. Please go look at them, because what he's proposing in terms of withdrawing from NATO, it's not who we are, and the world needs us to be better.
She's sitting there arguing. You can't hear that. Okay, I need to figure out what's going on with that. Oh, I know. All right, I'll let you hear it this way. When you hear, let's do it this way. I see what's going on. I see what's going on. I understand now. I understand. All right. So when you see Kamala Harris sitting with Liz Cheney, and they are arguing this. Let me see if I can find the clip. I think I know what's going on. I know what's going on. 1 second. 1 second. I'm sorry. Where is that clip? Where's the clip? Usually I have all my clips in one bin. All right. Effectively, when you hear Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris sitting on the stage, and both of them are arguing for NATO, when you see them deriding Donald Trump right here, this.
I tell people often, I spend a lot of time working on national security issues, and when people that I know in the Republican Party tell me they might be considering voting for Trump from a national security perspective, I ask them, go look at his national security policies. Please go look at them, because what he's proposing in terms of withdrawing from NATO, welcoming Vladimir Putin to attack our NATO allies, praising, he praises Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, and President Xi of China, and Putin of Russia. And if you listen to him, he doesn't just praise those people.
She's arguing that trying to make deals with Kim Jong-un is a bad thing, that Donald Trump wanting to end the war in Ukraine, because that's effectively what she's talking about, right? That's what they're hitting him on. This idea that, yeah, I hung out with Kim Jong-un. We did make a deal in order to stop those missiles from firing. Yes, I will end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Yes, I want to make peace around the globe. When he's arguing that, they fully believe that Trump is wrong and that the American public agrees with them. Look, when I give you an example, when Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were on the debate stage, and when the issue of abortion came up, and Kamala Harris gets very boisterous, she's hitting him hard on that issue. Well, I'm a woman. I have a vagina. And damn it, when we were talking about abortion, you are horrible, sir. And if you notice, Donald Trump is far more sheepish on that argument. Even when he's on, other stages and everything else, he is far more sheepish. And the reason he's sheepish is because what he knows is that the American public fundamentally disagrees with him and the Republican Party on the issue of abortion. And not just fundamentally disagrees with it, trying to find language so he wouldn't necessarily get hit too bad on the issue because he already knows he's going to lose that issue. It allows the person to take a certain amount, a position of authority. And a position of authority is conferred because they know the overwhelming majority of the people agree with me. I am in the prime position on this issue. All right. That's the way people act when they feel like they are part of the orthodoxy in regards to the way that they think and the thing that they're effectively talking about, and the other person is in a weaker position in that particular argument. They think the same thing about NATO. They think the same thing about peace abroad. They think the same thing about Trump, meaning Liz Cheney, Harris, and many of these other people full well believe that the American public's like, NATO is great. Expanding to the borders of the country is great. We shouldn't negotiate with leaders abroad like Kim Jong-un. We should keep these permanent wars going. They seem to believe that the American public is in agreement with them on that, and the American public is not. Donald Trump won on that issue, meaning the fact that Cheney and Harris were in one place after the next, pillar to post, hitting Donald Trump on the national security stuff because that's all they could hit her on, right? It's not a situation where Harris and Cheney agree on this other domestic policy stuff. No, they agree on foreign policy. They agree that we should keep these forever wars going. The Unity Party, especially on this issue of foreign entanglements. So their thought is that the American public agrees with us on this. Hence, running around the country, attacking Trump on the issues of NATO and on the issues of national security. When you're looking at the polling, however, and you ask people, whose foreign policy do you think is better, Trump or Harris? Trump won it in spades. So you get into a fight on the issue of foreign policy. You break up all of the stuff on foreign policy, talking to foreign leaders, talking to entanglements, talking to dictators. You bring up all of this stuff and you still lose on that issue. So what does it tell you? It tells you that the orthodoxy is not in line with what the American public thinks on that issue of foreign policy. And the fact that Donald Trump ran in this idea of a peace ticket, despite the fact that Donald Trump is not a peace candidate, that was the way he cast himself. But he was able to cast himself that way because you got Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris, not to mention Joe Biden, running around forever, not negotiating or not wanting to come to some kind of, bring hostilities down. It's fascinating. It's not just on the foreign policy orthodoxy, though. It's also on domestic. They full well believe that the American public agrees with them. And I mean Democrats specifically on this one. It seems that from their point of view, if you talk to Joanne Reed or somebody like that, that Kamala Harris did everything right because she talked about Trump in the way that Democrats think about Trump. Meaning, when they are saying, well, Harris ran a flawless campaign, Harris was phenomenal, Harris was great, everything just went stunning, but it was purely because she was a Black woman that she lost this race. She was utterly flawless.
It's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now.
What would need to be true for her to believe that this was indeed a flawless campaign? Think about that question for a bit. What needs to be true? Because look, that is absurd. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, Vincent, I've been having connection issues. My internet effectively dropped. I am back. Don't go anywhere. Look, let's start just from the beginning. Um, look, I can't. The rest of the public believes. They believe certain things the rest of the public believes. And I suspect that this is part of the reason why they are as shocked, blown away by the results of the election. When Joy-Ann Reid says this, when she gets on TV after the election and says something.
It's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic
question. What if she's not lying? Meaning, obviously, this wasn't a flawless campaign. Kamala Harris ran around the country with Liz Cheney. And Liz Cheney, Darth Vader's daughter, does she really believe that the Democratic Party is going to be enthused, revved up? Yes! Liz Cheney is here. So I am now going to run to the polls and vote for Kamala Harris. Does she really believe that any random run-of-the-mill Democrat, not even talking about a lefty, is really going to be enthused, revved up in order to vote for Liz Cheney. I don't know why she believes that, if that's true. But assume for the moment that Joy-Ann Reid is telling the truth there when she's saying that statement, that she is right from her own frame of reference, that Kamala Harris ran a perfect campaign. What needs to be true for her not to be lying in that statement? And what needs to be true is that she full well believed that whatever Kamala Harris was doing as she ran the campaign was the right way to run the campaign. Meaning, they believe that this prosecuting the case, they believe that the rest of the American public should or does see Donald Trump in the way that they themselves see Donald Trump, in which case they are oblivious to how she lost. Meaning, if you're looking at Trump, you say, well, he's a sexual abuser. He's 91 criminal indictments over his head. He's been convicted in the court of New York. If you think all of that stuff is true and you inhale the Kool-Aid and the vapor fumes that they have been putting out for the last several years, then you are blown away that Harris lost. That is not the way everyone else views this. Meaning they're viewing this through a very specific lens. And in the context of that very specific lens, they can't seem to see out of that box. In which case, from their point of view, I don't get it. Her campaign was flawless. She did great. Now, I have gone through chapter and verse and one failure after the next in regards to the race that Kamala Harris ran. A, you ran purely on this idea that Trump is horrible. B, you didn't really make a vision and campaign in a way that got people revved up in order to go and vote for you. This wasn't a campaign that was run on the left. You ran as a border security, transnational gangs, Dick Cheney running around with Democrat. There was no vision. There was no ultimate thing of what you wanted to do. None of that stuff was present. And it was very possible for her to win this race. If you're going to say you're a new way forward, then you should have been a new way forward. Kamala Harris didn't deviate one iota on the issue of Gaza. Kamala Harris couldn't necessarily distinguish herself in any difference than Joe Biden, whether it was during the administration or after the administration. No. What Democrats are seeing is that Kamala Harris said very bad things about Donald Trump. She said he was humiliating. She said he was embarrassing. She said he was a sexual abuser. She said he was incompetent and incapable of being in this particular position. She said all of those things. And if you're a Democrat, you're like, yes, she's getting at him. She's saying what she needs to say. But again, that's through the lens of a Democrat. That's not through the lens of the rest of the American public that wants roads, bridges. They feel like their economy or their economic situation is getting worse, whether perceived or real. And if they feel that way, then I would say for the most part, their feelings are valid. I'm pointing out that Kamala Harris ran the race in the way that the Democratic Party was okay with her running the race. And that through their lens, her attacking Donald Trump in these kind of personal and direct terms, as opposed to dealing with this idea of America and what do Americans need and what brings Americans together, from their point of view, perfectly fine. Joy-Ann Reid will be economically okay. These talking heads that are on TV will be economically okay. They don't need health insurance. They don't need education. They don't need Social Security benefits expanded. They got that stuff. They can afford that stuff. I would imagine Reid makes millions of dollars a year. I would imagine all of these talking heads on these networks make millions of dollars a year. They are intact. So for them, if you're just going to go after Trump, no issue. Whereas somebody like healthcare, what about education? What about Social Security? What about expanding Medicare in order to include, things like dental and eye care? Things that affect the overwhelming majority of the American public. What about running on that? But I'm a lefty. And that's not necessarily what the Democratic Party does. No, what the Democratic Party does is gain $1 billion and lose to a man who they call fascist, Hitler, and who they call his supporters Nazis. They full well believe it. And by the way, not just on the notion of going after Trump, they also believe the same thing on foreign policy. The reason that you would bring Liz Cheney out and they would talk about Donald Trump, oh, he's going to pull us out of NATO. Oh, he's talking to dictators. Oh, he's trying to talk to and meet with Kim Jong-un. From their point of view, they honestly believe that they have the whip hand in that argument. They are standing on stage thinking that they're in a position of strength, when the reality of it is the American public agree with Trump on this issue. If you think about what the American public said and who they trusted on the issue of foreign policy, they litigated foreign policy in the election. It wasn't as straightforward as I would have liked. Donald Trump often talked about it obliquely. They're going to get us into a third world war. They're going to get us into a third world war. What if Liz Cheney had a gun in her hand? Would she be going out there just chicken hawking the way that she is? He talked about it obliquely. He didn't necessarily hit it directly. By the same token, it was litigated. When Harris is saying, well, he's hanging out with dictators. What do you think she means by that? She means that he's willing to make deals to end conflicts. When Trump says, I'm going to end wars, not start wars. Now, it's not that Donald Trump is a peace candidate, but Donald Trump ran as a peace candidate, if that makes sense. There's a difference in those things. How you cast yourself versus what you are very different things. He cast himself as, I'm the one who's going to end these conflicts. They're the ones who are starting those conflicts. Okay, fair enough. You run a race, you hit him on that issue, he wins that race. And the American public, at the end of it, when you ask them, okay, what did you think about foreign policy and who did you choose on foreign policy? Harris, Biden lost on that issue. My point is, they're not the orthodoxy on the issue of foreign policy. The American public, all things being equal, if you give them a choice, would prefer to end these conflicts and stop these wars. Oftentimes, they just don't get the choice. You have an orthodoxy of Democrats and Republicans that fundamentally believe the same things on the issue of foreign policy. Forever wars, we're not going to make deals, we're going to deal with a position of strength, everybody's a vassal, we don't have equals, etc. It's not that Donald Trump is that radically different in that position. The only difference is he has to A, end the conflicts, especially if he can get a B, not necessarily be all that ideologically wed to these wars in a way that typical Republicans and Democrats are wed to the wars. The disconcerting thing about the people that he's choosing for his cabinet, they are hardcore neocons, every bit as worse as Pompeo and every bit as much as Nikki Haley. And so for all of this talk of, I'm going to stop wars, not start them, if people of policy, this does not speak well to what this is going to look like in real terms. Who knows? As I pointed out, Donald Trump is a wild card. It's unclear what Trump is going to ultimately do. That said, he has made a few new appointments. One of those appointments, by the way, this is Trump meeting with Hitler, as he's often called. One second, if I can get this right. Come on, come on. There we are. All right, this is Trump meeting with Hitler. Or I'm sorry, this is Joe Biden meeting with Hitler. I mean, that is what they called him, right?
Many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Joe Biden meeting with Hitler. Joe Biden meeting with Hitler. Think about it for a bit. They called them trash, or his supporters trash. They called the supporters Nazis. They called him Hitler. They called him a fascist. They called him everything but a child of God. They said democracy is going to end, meaning that there's going to be the end of democracy. They said people are going to be rounded up and thrown in camps. They said that journalists were going to be shot. They said that he was going to shoot and execute Liz Cheney, and yet no hysteria, nobody freaking out. Former president
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, Donald.
shaking hands.
Congratulations. And,
All is
look forward
good.
to having a, like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated.
They put out all of that hysteria purely for the election. Purely for the election. Don't get me wrong. I don't doubt that they wanted to win. Fair enough. But they took as a political tactic to scream at the height of their lungs in order to create a certain amount of hysteria in the American public as a political tactic in order to stay in power. The thought is we're going to go after them from the courts. So for all of this talk, oh my God, I can't believe Trump is saying locking up Hillary Clinton. They did any and everything in their power to lock him up. The case in New York was fundamentally bogus. And again, this is somebody who doesn't even like Trump. That case was fundamentally bogus. 90-something indictments. All of those indictments were effectively put to bed the moment that Donald Trump won this race. And if you had any doubts, Joe Biden is now sitting there with Hitler, shaking hands, seeming pleased as punch, happy as a lark. The world is fine. They did all of that as a political tactic to stay in office. Just amazing. Just utterly amazing. Like, it is outrageous on so many levels. They didn't run this as if it was a typical campaign. They ran this purely from this angle that if we scare the hell out of the American public enough, if we can make Donald Trump radioactive enough, if we can create this notion of a clear, present, imminent threat, if we can do that enough, then regardless of who we are running with, we can win the race. Hillary Clinton tried that, by the way. Hillary Clinton tried that, though, with Donald Trump being a black box, and she still lost. In this particular situation, Donald Trump had already been president. The look, the image of Donald Trump in the minds of various people and everything else had already been set. So you are fundamentally trying to reshape the image of somebody who the American public already knows. And you're doing that without giving this kind of clear vision and context to who you yourself are. So instead of trying to reset what the American public think about Donald Trump, what you should have been doing is setting what the American public thinks about you. You should have been setting your own values and ideas. You should have been giving these big ticket plans and ideas, especially if you're saying, I am a new way forward. The very casting of that political disposition allows you to go big. But big is not what Kamala Harris was going to go. Small, tiny, cagey, not necessarily giving you these kind of big visionary items that the American public can get behind, rally for, and actually care enough about to go to the polling and vote. No, their plan was, we need to scare the living shit out of the American public. That's what we need to do. That's our political ploy. That is our way of getting back into power. It is not about Harris. It's about Trump. And that's where we're going to make the election all and entirely about Trump. Fair enough. You did that. That tactic failed. I want to take a very quick break because I'm hoping that I have a guest that may be coming on shortly. Give me roughly 1 minute. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I run from Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. If you guys dig the content, give it a like, share it. You can always support it through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chat, Super Stickers. All will be read, providing they're not sexist, racist, or bigoted. Malik will be coming on at 8:15. We also have Jen Perlman. She will be on at 9:15. She is the one that ran against Deborah Wasserman Schultz. She lost that race, but she is a lefty. I like her dearly. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. I approve of that pick. I approve of that pick. So right here, Trump names Tulsi Gabbard as pick for the Director of National Intelligence, and I applaud that pick. Tulsi Gabbard, if you remember, because she was criticizing the Biden administration, ended up on the watch list, meaning when she got on airplanes, she was on a terror watch list. This is the nonsense that the Biden administration was doing. You also get many of these cretins in the Democratic Party, like Abigail Spangler. As a former CIA case officer, I saw men and women of the U.S. intelligence community put their lives on the line every day for this country, and I'm appalled at the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. You know what they don't like about Tulsi Gabbard? Because she wanted to stop these wars. If you remember, Tulsi Gabbard's main theme when she was running in the race was stop these wars. We are wasting money, we're wasting energy, and we're wasting lives. And we are effectively creating chaos around the globe. We need to stop this regime change war in Syria being one of them. We're getting 500,000 people killed. And for what? Because Obama wanted us to knock over the Assad government? This is nonsense. This needs to stop. They called her an Assad puppet, a Putin apologist. They called her everything but a child of God, every name in the book. The woman is literally a veteran, served in Iraq. And they're going to smear her in this way for saying we need to stop these wars. That's my point. They believe that they are part of orthodoxy. People like her lost. You lost the argument. You lost your argument. He won. The American public chose. Either you believe in democracy or not. And in this very specific case, the Democratic consensus was that we don't like your forever wars. We don't like your take on this issue. And instead of them accepting that, they're now bitching from behind the scenes, complaining on Twitter. Oh, I can't believe that Donald Trump is going to choose this person for it. Tulsi Gabbard is a damn good choice. And it actually falls in line with what Trump's argument was as he was running the race. This has been one of the only choices that has fell in line with what Donald Trump basically communicated when he was running during the election. I applaud this choice. Tulsi Gabbard is a great choice for this. Tulsi Gabbard was agitating in order to get Secretary of State. She made the point that the New York Times got it wrong, that Rubio had been chosen, and that choice hadn't been finalized. So Tulsi was pushing very hard to try to get the Secretary of State position. She ends up with the Director of National Intelligence. I applaud that choice. Tulsi Gabbard is fantastic for that choice. I wish there were more people like her that Donald Trump put into his administration in these particular positions. But on this one, I approve. All of these people that might be losing their mind over this can go F themselves. You lost. Elections have consequences. And from a foreign policy standpoint, the American public is not with you. You are not the orthodoxy. You're not the main position that the American public takes on this issue. If that was true, Trump would have lost. He didn't lose. And that just not lose on this issue specifically, as the American public gets asked in exit polling and whatnot. They prefer Trump. They prefer Trump. So from a foreign policy standpoint, if the objective is to stop and limit these wars, Tulsi Gabbard is a damn good choice for that pick. She's not perfect, of course. She tends to be a bit amped up on this notion of drone warfare, which I don't necessarily like all that much. But from a standpoint of why are we doing all of this killing? Why are we doing these regime change wars? Why are we trying to knock over the Assad government? Why are we That is good. That is good. And that falls in line with what the American public wants. Matt Gaetz, Attorney General. Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. This definitely shook up right many people. That Gaetz was added for this particular position, or that Donald Trump chose Gaetz for this position. This is Gaetz, in case you don't know who Gaetz is. Gaetz was the one that was instrumental in getting rid of McCarthy. Gaetz, because if you remember when McCarthy got elected in the Republican majority in the House, they went through like 8 rounds of votes. And for whatever reason, they could not come up with a vote tally to get McCarthy elected. So McCarthy had to accept certain provisions that would come back to haunt him later on. One of those provisions was that if even one member of the caucus wants you gone, then a no confidence vote could be aired. Gaetz and McCarthy had issues with one another. McCarthy was doing an investigation into Gaetz messing around with an underage girl. Gaetz didn't like that all that much. Gaetz went out, became that one vote to say, I want a no confidence vote. 7 Republicans, I believe, joined with 220 Democrats in order to get rid of McCarthy, which allowed Mike Johnson to end up in the spot for Speaker of the House. Now, that same Matt Gaetz, loudmouth, smarmy, is now in the position to be Attorney General. So this is him, and I suspect this is probably why Donald Trump chose him for this particular position. This is him going after the current Speaker of the current Attorney General. Let me find this clip. Hold on one second. Is this it? This it. No. Where is that clip? Here we are. This is Matt Gaetz going after the current Attorney General.
It all up for us right now. Will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fonnie Willis's office and Letitia James's office?
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. I get that.
State.
The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those communications?
You make a request, we'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing. You come in here and you lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident.
So I hope you get what he's getting at. They're pointing out, from their point of view, was there coordination between Merrick Garland's office and the various offices that were going after Trump? And the argument is basically like, okay, the New York case was bogus. You are effectively saying that Donald Trump paying hush money to shut up a porn star is effectively a campaign donation. And as a campaign donation, that there was some other mysterious crime, even though that crime hasn't necessarily been elucidated or clarified. And because the two together can now, that it amounts as a campaign donation. Because he put it down as a lawyer expense or a legal expense, you can now go after him for a felony over this. Because it was in pursuant to another crime. And mind you, keep in mind, this is something similar that Hillary Clinton did. When Hillary Clinton did the Russia stuff, the trove of Russian information, the Steele dossier, Clinton put that down as a legal fee. Clinton got a slap on the wrist for that. Donald Trump, they went as far as to try to prosecute him and put him in a cage over it. Gaetz' point, especially for the one in Georgia, have you been communicating with the various offices that are prosecuting Trump? Garland, being cagey on that issue, doesn't want to just say yes or no. So he says, Well, those offices are independent. Those offices can do whatever they want. That's not what I'm asking you. Have you been in communication with those offices, yay or nay? Meaning, under the model that Garland is saying, Garland could say, well, we would like you to look into Trump. Okay, well, that still means that they're independent offices. So that's not what we're asking you. We're asking you, have you been back and forth? If you remember, this is the same thing with Twitter, right? Where Twitter, Facebook, YouTube started responding to pressure from government services and from government offices. And so they would tell Twitter, hey, could you get rid of that guy? Or, hey, we don't like what they're saying here. Hey, could you shadow ban that person? Could you remove that tweet? Could you get rid of this particular person? And what would the government say? Well, those are private organizations. We didn't force them to do anything. Yeah. But were you in communication with them? Were you talking to them? And then when the Twitter files came out, it became clear as day that the federal government, various offices were pressing Twitter, Facebook, and all of these other social media companies to eliminate certain information or shadow ban people that they didn't particularly like on various issues, including Ukraine or, for the matter, Israel. Their argument would be they're private businesses. We didn't force them to do anything. That's why Gaetz is pressing him on this. Yeah. I know they're independent offices, but have you been in communications? And if so, will you reveal those communications so we can inspect and make sure that you are not running some kind of operation to try to get rid of Donald Trump from your office? That guy is the new attorney general. That guy is a new attorney general. All of these people, by the way, Rubio, Gaetz, John Ratcliffe, I'm sorry. All of these are also UFO people. So I don't know what that's going to mean in real terms, but all of these people have shown the propensity to get to the bottom of the UFO issue, especially Rubio. Rubio was one of those people that were signing on to the legislation for the National Defense Authorization Information Act, National Defense Authorization Act, in order to release this information to the American public. John Ratcliffe apparently was trying to release this information once before when he was Director of National Intelligence. So all of these people have shown a propensity in the past to talk about the UFO issue or bring this up. That's just an aside. It's just interesting to me. All right. So these are the two new names that have been added to the list. I don't know if I have any feelings about the Gaetz one. Tulsi Gabbard one is fantastic, though. That is a fantastic choice. Fantastic. The other thing I want to push out before we go into another segment, this. CIA official charged in leak of classified documents about Israeli military plans. Asif Rahman, who worked overseas, was arrested on Tuesday by the FBI and faces 2 counts of violating the Espionage Act. All right. So do you remember a few weeks ago, before Israel was about to launch its attack on Iran, this was a retaliation strike from Iran's retaliation strike. And Israel was like, oh, it's going to be huge. It's going to be massive. And they were poking out their chests. They were talking about all the things that they were going to do and everything else. And you got these documents that were leaked, effectively talking about Israeli plans, what they were planning, how many planes were potentially going to be part of it, what they were thinking in regards to their war plans. And these were things that the United States had basically gleaned from our own intelligence. All right. So the question became, who leaked it? And for the longest time, there was even a question of whether or not the Biden administration leaked it in order to prevent or to, let's say, create a hedge for Israel to go through with the attack. The idea being, okay, we've leaked your plans. So, you shouldn't go through with the attack now that everybody else knows what you're going to do. That seems to not be the case. This guy leaked the information from abroad, of all places. So right here, a CIA official has been charged with disclosing classified documents that appear to show Israeli plans to retaliate against Iran for the missile attack earlier this year, according to court documents and people familiar with the matter. The official, Asif Rahman, was indicted last week in federal court in Virginia on 2 counts of willful retention and transmission of national defense information under the Espionage Act. He was arrested by the FBI on Tuesday in Cambodia and was set to appear in court in Guam on Thursday, meaning today. The link offered a glimpse into the depth of Americans' concerns about Israeli military plans and illustrated the extent to which the United States spies on even its closest allies. The spying is not that big of a deal. Everybody spies, especially on your friends. That's how you know they're your friends, right? But it is wild to me that this guy was in Cambodia and had access to this information. This puts you in the mind of Jack Teixeira, who has also apparently been prosecuted recently. Jack Teixeira was the guy who was in the National Guard, and he started leaking all of this stuff on the Discord server. And it was military plans, it was stuff behind the scenes, it was stuff about Ukraine. I mean, it was across the board, stuff that you wouldn't think would just be at the fingertips of a National Guardsman. Nevertheless, it was. And that information was released. It seems that it wasn't the Biden administration that was releasing this. It seems that it was this guy. I could be wrong, but that seems to be who they're pinning this on. It's fascinating. Utterly fascinating. One of other Donald Trump's picks, by the way, that terrifies the hell out of me, there are few. Mike Huckabee has been chosen as ambassador to Israel. It's a horrifying pick. But again, $100 million gets you a lot of clout in the Trump administration, apparently. Because keep in mind, Miriam Adelson gave Donald Trump $100 million in this presidential race. Now, if I'm right, or if the reporting is right, that Trump only raised $390 million, basically $400 million. A fourth of what he raised was given to him by her. Now, she probably put that money into a super PAC. I'm just making the point of a fourth of what Trump raised. She gave him a fourth of his own, the money that he raised. God, I'm saying that poorly. Super PACs and the money that a candidate raised are not the same thing. I'm trying to say that whatever Donald Trump raised, that $400 million, she gave him a fourth of what he himself was able to raise. That's the way to say it. So that buys you a lot of clout. What she wanted was for Donald Trump to allow the annexation of the West Bank to Israel, basically to allow Israel just to steal the West Bank. This is Mike Huckabee, the guy who they're choosing for this role, UN ambassador to Israel, who is effectively saying there is no such thing as a Palestinian. They don't exist. They don't exist at all.
Basically, I mean, there really is no such thing as, and I have to be careful saying this because people know it's really good. There's really no such thing as a Palestinian. There's not, Arab and Persians, you know, and there's such complexity within that. There's really no such thing. That's been a political tool to try to force land away from Israel.
It's been a political tool to force land away from Israel. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. That guy is now the ambassador to Israel for the United States. People of policy, right? People of policy. Now, I would say, though, that is he really that different than Antony Blinken? Or is he really that different than Amos Hochstein, the one that was a literal IDF soldier, dual citizen, that Joe Biden made as envoy to Lebanon? The same IDF that is murdering Lebanese hand over fist right now. Is it really that dramatic of a difference? So all of these people are cretins, all of these people are monsters, all of these people are sociopaths. By the same token, though, they're in both of admins. So it's not like Donald Trump is up the ante in choosing a creature for this role. They were already full of creatures. Sociopath Matt Miller, sociopath John Kirby, sociopath and incompetent asshole Patel. All of these people were horrible, horrible human beings. And all of these people were backing and funding and covering for genocide. So Donald Trump putting in more cretins into this particular role is not necessarily changing the dynamics of anything all that much. No, I don't like these picks, but I can't necessarily look and say these picks are all that dramatically different than what Joe Biden had in that spot. Can't say it. Here's another lunatic that Trump has added to his repertoire of misfits and incompetent people, or at the very least sociopaths. This guy is the one that Donald Trump has made Secretary of State. If this doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what will. Where's that clip? The guy we were talking about yesterday believes, right here, Pete Hegseth.
So much of the old.
I want to introduce you to your new Secretary of State. I'm sorry, your new Secretary of Defense.
You had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle. 1948 was a miracle. 1967 was a miracle. 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle. And there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
This are these Christian Zionists that believes that Jesus is coming back when that thing is built in Israel. Like, these people are lunatics. And this is the goofball. This is the lunatic, the sociopath that Donald Trump is added as Secretary of Defense. If that is not mind-blowing, I don't know what is. That just... But again, if you give Donald Trump $100 million, then Donald Trump apparently will do whatever you want. And when Donald Trump was saying that Marco Rubio was a Miriam Adelson puppet, it seems like Donald Trump is also, since he also hired Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State. Just astonishing. Just astonishing. These people are lunatics. But these are the people that Donald Trump are choosing for his administration. Here is Pete Hegseth again, your new Secretary of Defense, talking about Iran. And apparently, he believes that we should be attacking Iran wholeheartedly.
Capabilities. Or you know what, take out a Quds headquarters while you're at it if you want. I understand that's not a popular idea.
But I understand, I've been hearing that we believe that the Iranians are hiding missiles and weapons in some of these cultural sites, churches,
of course they do.
Mosques.
This is what Islamists do. It's what they've done on the battlefield against folks like me and my entire generation. Human shields, using mosques, using hospitals, schools. This is what our enemies do. Now,
Iran is a country of nearly 100 million people. It's 3 times the size of Iraq. And he is effectively saying, well, yeah, we should be blowing up mosques and schools because Iran is totally hiding missiles in schools. Why would they need to do that? If you're talking about Gaza, where you have an open-air prison colony and people are just built on top of each other, okay, well, there is nowhere to go. Any fight that you do in a prison is going to be in the prison. And if we're talking about human shields, well, the UN has already pointed out that Israel uses human shields. It grabs Palestinians and uses them for things like booby traps, or for that matter, put them out in the light of day to try to shield themselves from getting hit. They do it constantly. It's just policy in Israel at this point. So it's a bit rich that this is the argument that he's making here. I'm just pointing out that that is your new Secretary of Defense. And the moment that you make that argument of, well, yeah, there's a bomb in that hospital, then you can bomb a hospital. Hey, there's a bomb in that school, then you can bomb a school. Is there one in earnest? Who knows? Who cares? This is an argument that would have been as thoroughly as comfortable with any random Nazi as apparently it is with any Israeli soldier, or for that matter, Hegseth. That is your new department, head of your new Department of Defense. That's your new Secretary of Defense. He's a lunatic, full on. And if Donald Trump's argument is, I'm going to stop wars, not start them, and if indeed people of policy, then Trump has just lied to and betrayed the American public, as you know, in general, but his base in earnest. These picks are utterly horrendous. Gabbard is a really good pick. Gaetz, no feelings about one way or the other. From the standpoint of John Ratcliffe, Ratcliffe seems to be a pretty decent pick for the CIA or head of the CIA. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong on that, tell me otherwise. But I would say Gabbard, of all of these picks, seems to be the only pick that I'm looking at. It's like, good job. She fulfills your obligation of what you say you're going to do in that office. Everybody else, these people are creatures. These people are creatures, swamp monsters. That's right, Lithium. Swamp monsters, lunatics, all of them. And by the way, let's be very clear. Trump got $100 million to do exactly what he's doing right now. He's fulfilling the obligations of the people who paid him. He's been bought off to do exactly what he is doing right now. It was infinitely foreseeable that Donald Trump was going to do exactly what he's doing right now. And what's wild about it is that the person, the group, the team, the party that was supposed to be the hedge against all of this was the Democratic Party. And they could not show a distinction between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the issue of Israel and Palestine, meaning the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign were effectively saying very similar things on the issue of Gaza and Palestine. And at no point did Kamala Harris deviate or change her argument, her language, in order to create some kind of disparity between these things. Fair enough. You lost on that. You even lost the Muslim community on that. And you have full-on monsters who will come in office under Donald Trump. You guys are listening to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I am glad to be with you, and I'm glad that you can be with me, that we are here today, this morning, doing the news. Coming up in about 10 minutes, I'm going to have Malik Abdul. He's going to give me his take on the election. I don't think I've spoken to him since Donald Trump won, so he is probably going to be ebullient. I want to talk a moment. Oh, by the way, if you dig the content, give it a like, share the video, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. If you really dig the content, support the PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chat or Super Stickers. All will be read. In fact, I'm probably going to read them before I bring in Malik. And I'll also read them towards the end of the show. This ratings, the ratings for MSNBC have plummeted. Same thing with CNN. Same thing with liberal media online. Sam Cedar, David Pakman, all of these liberal, quote unquote, progressive YouTubers running the channels. Apparently, Pakman did a video a few days ago where he was in a full-blown panic talking about the number of subscribers that he lost. They're saying that they lost tens of thousands of subscribers almost immediately over the course of the last few days going into the election and after. And he was bewildered by the whole thing. He said he picked up the phone, he called other progressives, and all of them were saying the same thing. We're losing members, we're losing members. And I wrote above his video, is it possible something that you were telling them that ended up not being true, that they were disillusioned by and left? And as I pointed out, I haven't lost any subscribers. I've gained over 1,000. What are you telling your audience? That's not just online. MSNBC, same thing. Joy Reid, down 54.6%. Ari Melber, down 49.6%. Chris Hayes, down 47.2%. Alex Wagner, down 53.6%. Morning Joe, down 39.6%. Joe has more staying power than everybody else. Stephanie Rule, down 67%. 67%. 70% of our audience said, good day, miss. Good day. Andrea Mitchell, down 39.7%. That is mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing. And to make this even worse, apparently, CNN is going to be laying off people. CNN boss Mark Thompson to lay off hundreds after election day ratings wipeout. Ratings challenge CNN's reported to set for a major bloodbath, with boss Mark Thompson expected to lay off high-priced on-air talent as part of wide-ranging layoffs. The cable network, which lagged behind its rivals MSNBC and Fox News during last week's election night coverage, will implement, quote, layoffs that will impact hundreds of employees across the organization, according to Puck News. Thompson, who took over, ousted Chris Licht, will cut personnel from CNN television production teams whose, quote, talents won't necessarily be needed in the new digital-first landscape, unquote. What they realize is that they are losing out to the internet. Like, if you think about it, where do you get most of your information from? Do you go to CNN if you're looking for news? And even if you're watching something from CNN, are you seeing it on TV or are you seeing it online? And if you're thinking about people like Joe Rogan gets millions and millions and millions of people watching his show. And you can look at many YouTube shows that get millions of viewers, even more than what television networks are doing. What they realize is, oh my God, we're dying. Our industry is taking a hit. And not just our industry is taking a hit. People don't really watch us. We're not that, engaging. And if you're a Democrat, you're a liberal, and they've told you that Harris is going to win. They told you that Harris is phenomenal. Harris is great. Joe Biden is just on it. Joe Biden is plugged in. And then you see the debate, and Joe Biden looks the way Joe Biden looks. Okay, well, what are you thinking about what they told you? You see Kamala Harris get wiped out electorally. Okay, what are you thinking about what they told you about her campaign and how awesome her campaign is? Meaning, on election night, when Harris lost, I would imagine there was a sudden and radical appraisal of reality that the people who were watching MSNBC was not getting actual reality, which is the reason why many of them were probably shocked, and which is the reason why many of them responded in the way that they responded. So, some of these people are apparently going to lose their jobs. Now, I am not necessarily chest thumping this as somebody who lost their job, but I didn't lose my job because I sucked at my job. I lost my job because the federal government was concerned, bothered by, and what's the word I'm looking for? Insecure about me challenging the narrative of events in regards to the global scene and global politics. They are losing their jobs because they are just, A, bad at it in some cases, but B, they gave an appraisal of reality to the public that just wasn't indicative of that real reality. And when election night hit, it all fell apart. Hence, people recoiled. Whether that was progressive media, as they call themselves online, or whether that's progressive media on MSNBC, or whether that's boring propaganda outlet CNN. Keep in mind, CNN was the one that reported that Donald Trump wanted to shoot Liz Cheney in the face. They reported it straight, just like that, despite the fact that Trump said nothing of the such. Meaning CNN, just before the election, took a conversation where Donald Trump said, I need to stop these wars. We are wasting tens of trillions of dollars and we get nothing out of it. If these war hawks, these chicken hawks, if you put a gun in their hand and you sit them out there, they will take a different tack as opposed to the way they act in Washington. They took that statement and turned it into Trump wants to shoot Liz Cheney. That Hitler, that fascist, wants to put this great statesman, Liz Cheney, against a wall and put a gun to her head, and he shoots her because Donald Trump is a fascist and he's Hitler. When he really said the opposite. That was CNN. CNN brought one person on after the next to talk about Donald Trump wanting to execute Liz Cheney. And they did it over and over and over and over again. So when I look at CNN and you see their ratings plummet, when I look at MSNBC and I see their ratings plummet, I suspect that their ratings are plummet because what they have been telling their people has not been indicative of actual reality. And when people realize that, those people recoiled. I would imagine some of those people also just couldn't deal with the news of it. They couldn't deal with the reality that Donald Trump won again. They were probably demoralized. And we saw these freak out fits. I showed some of these videos. People were crying. People were freaking out. Do I have any of these? I don't know if I have any of these still queued. But
No problem.
Cohen was one of them. Like this guy.
I can't believe Trump's actually going to win this fucking thing. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm so pissed off. God damn it.
Oh, that is the funniest thing in the world to me. That is the funniest thing in the world to me. Look, man, they're realizing that they are losing the argument. And part of the reason that they realize this, and that you know they realize this, censorship. When they are coming in and saying we need to do something about Twitter. Why? Because we can't win the argument otherwise. When you hear people on The View and they have these open conversations, oh, these social media misinformation. Well, yeah, it's misinformation because they can't win the argument. It becomes misinformation the moment that you can't necessarily make your argument in a way that the American public accepts and put you in office over. And so their thought is, well, we need to somehow corral the information that people are getting their hands on. That's their thought. It's not us. We're blameless. We're flawless. We're fantastic. No, the issue is that people, for whatever reason, don't believe we're fantastic. And so we need to give them information for them to also believe that we are utterly fantastic. So we need to corral Twitter. We need to pass legislation to change the First Amendment. We need to do these things in order to make people know how great and fantastic we, the Democratic Party, and the establishment is. They're losing the argument. They're losing the argument. Whether that's on issues of war, or for that matter, whether that's on issues of domestic stuff. And look, I'm saying they're losing the argument. I don't mean this in a sense that they're losing it in a way that somebody's coming in that's lefty or progressive or that's going to do things for the American public. I'm saying that from this kind of liberal thought, whether it's on CNN or whether it's on MSNBC, this arrogance that seems to just be so pervasive. And it's like, I don't know how you can be arrogant and lose a race simultaneously. And yet they do. And yet they do. They are getting their lunch eaten by Fox News, and they're getting their lunch eaten by internet services, meaning shows online and everything else. And they feel the pressure on them. So CNN has decided we need to make changes. And the change that they're going to make is to axe a bunch of their staff. Question becomes, is CNN going to or MSNBC going to follow? And are some of those people, the talking heads that you typically see on air, are they also going to take an axe? Oh, that's the question. That is the question. Let's go to our, oh, wow, we have a few today. Bibi knew, despite Kamala and Joe being just as pro-Israel as Trump, he squeezed all the juice out of the orange. So Israel, with Trump, presuming the United States would be partly rejuvenated, more juice. Yeah. Your point is, he basically got Joe Biden to give him any and everything that he wanted while simultaneously making and humiliating Joe Biden over the course of this year. Think about it. Joe Biden would say, I shouldn't go into Rafah. He goes into Rafah. Joe Biden would say, well, I held the 2,000 bombs because, he's killing so many innocent women and children. And Netanyahu comes out and says, he is withholding weapons that we are using to fight this war. Meaning he humiliated Joe Biden over and over and over and over again. Nothing Joe Biden gave was ever enough. And the very act of Joe Biden grumbling behind the scenes was outrageous from the Netanyahu standpoint. He cut Joe Biden like nobody's business. And now, after humiliating Joe Biden, Netanyahu believes that Trump is coming in and Trump is going to give him any and everything that he wants. Be careful what you wish for. Truth be told, Trump may give you any and everything that you want, but I have a hard time believing that Trump's ego would allow him to allow himself to be treated in a way that you treated Joe Biden. I could be wrong. Yeah, he will give you whatever you want, but you're not going to treat him in the same way. Sparky, the establishment coalition, which beat Trump in 2020, didn't have Israel's full support towards the end of the 2024 election. Without Israel's influence, the intended fortification fell too short. Didn't have Israel's full support. Is that true? The establishment coalition would beat Trump in 2020, didn't have Israel's full support towards the end of 2024. But that's just it, though. The majority, okay, so I guess it goes in two ways. The majority of Jews voted for the Democrats, like meaning Jewish Americans. They tend to vote for Democrats. If you're talking about organizations like AIPAC or some of the other Jewish lobby organizations, yeah, they did put money in Trump because Donald Trump was vociferous and unequivocal that he basically give Israel whatever he wanted. I mean, if you think about it, the people who Donald Trump are choosing is just Israel first. That's not America first. That lunatic, Hegseth, the guy's a sociopath. And Donald Trump is putting him as the defense secretary. What is the other one? The one for the ambassador for Israel. He doesn't even believe there's a Palestine. And even Huckabee, even if you don't believe there's a Palestine, you are still occupying a group of people that you evicted from their homeland. So whatever you want to call it random land. You're still occupying, killing, injuring, using as human shields, raping systemically this population. Just saying. Great work. Always keep on trucking. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Sparky. Let's see. Ellie JJ USA, our owners as December 23rd, 1917. Love those wars. Yes, they do love those wars, Ella. Sparky would love to see Tulsi as Secretary of State. Same here. Despite ostensibly being a Zionist, I think that mostly comes from her Indian husband. She used to not be so anti-Muslim despite being a soldier. Okay, we have our guest here. I'm going to read the rest of these towards the end. I'm going to bring in Malik Abdul. There he is, the man, the legend. Man, the legend, Malik Abdul. And just let people know who you are, Malik, even though I think they probably already know who you are. Let me pull this up. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm just a random guy that sometimes have a political opinion that people sometimes are interested in. That's all. That's who Malik Abdul is. That's the only.
Is that what you are, random guy, Malik Abdul? Political analyst, writer, Republican strategist with over 15 years of public and private sector experience, and great friend of the show, my former co-host, Malik Abdul. What's going on, man? How you doing this morning?
Man, we made it to Thursday after the election year, for real.
So, what are your thoughts? I guess let's start there. Everybody who's come on the show, I've asked them the same thing to start it off. Give me your take on the election. Why did Trump win? Why did Harris lose? And what is your feeling? You backed Trump all the way through this. We've been talking about it for, 2 years, I would say? Sitting
2 years. Okay,
give me your thoughts on it. What's your thoughts on the election?
Okay, so let me go one at a time here. Let me remember what was first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let's start off at the very beginning. Give me your thoughts on the election in general.
So I was not, the only shocking part for me was the number of wins that he actually got, meaning that Donald Trump not only winning the electoral college, that he won the popular vote. Obviously, the last time that was done was George W. Bush in 2004. So I was always, and as I've said many times before, I was always 50-50. Even when people were very bullish on Trump winning, I was like, But I said the same with Kamala Harris when she had that bump right after her announcement, after she announced Tim Walz going into the convention, after the convention, after the debate with Donald Trump. I was never so certain that she would lose, or Donald Trump for that matter. But I do believe that the margins of his win are absolutely extraordinary, and something that, although he talked about, very few people actually believed. I mean, the numbers for, what's happening now is that people are saying that, it wasn't the campaign. I'm sorry, it wasn't Kamala Harris. It was Joe Biden. It was the campaign. Kamala Harris ran a flawless campaign.
These are excuses. I've been putting a knife in that. And just to play the clip that you're referring to, I mean, because this stuff is outrageous. And to just back up your point real quick, Trump got 1 million more votes than he did in 2020. He got 75 million. Harris only made like 71 million, something to that effect. To put into perspective, Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Joe Biden had 10 million more votes than Kamala Harris. If Kamala Harris was able to get Joe Biden numbers, she would have won this race. And so I call these people not esoteric voters, but these kind of, because from my point of view, if you had a person who voted in 2020 but didn't vote in 2024, that person made a choice, meaning that person was gettable. You just didn't get them. And so you could not give an argument, a statement, a vision that those people cared enough about to get out in order to put that lever for you. And the fact that they had a propensity to vote in the previous election, I would call this still a vote, either way you look at it. So I agree with you. The Republican Party is going to win more seats.
What was the clip? Which clip?
I'm sorry, Joy Ann Reid. So this is Joy Ann Reid effectively saying Kamala Harris was blameless. She was fantastic. She ran a flawless campaign.
It's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone.
Malik, Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. And the fact that Queen Latifah endorsed it, that clearly indicates it is a flawless campaign. She had Swifties, Malik. There were Swifties. Taylor Swift. So,
not only Taylor Swift, she had the Queen Bee herself, Beyonce. But you heard what Joy Ann Reid said, and this is the problem with them in this autopsy that's never going to happen. Notice what she said at the end. She starts the whole noun here is she ran a flawless campaign. It's not her fault. And she ends with, and the reason that we know, I mean, come on now, the reason that we know that she ran a flawless campaign is that a celebrity, Queen Latifah, endorsed her, and she never endorses anyone. That was her, to even close up that moment with saying, but she got celebrity endorsements.
Yeah,
that's how they view the success of a campaign. And even though whether it's on the right or the left, celebrity endorsements have never helped. But the fact that they were able to lean in so heavily on she's our girl. Now, the thing about Kamala Harris, I'll just say quickly, why there are many reasons to throw salt or water on this idea that she ran a flawless campaign. I'm glad you mentioned the vote march, like the how he ended up winning the popular vote.
Yep.
So we've talked about many times before that between the race between Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, that Hillary Clinton in California alone won
4 million
almost 4 million or so, 3 or 4 million votes.
Yeah.
Well, I went and looked at the numbers. So in 2016, Hillary Clinton won 61% of California's vote.
Mhm.
Joe Biden came back a couple of years later and won 63, maybe 64% of California's vote. In your audience, you guys check me on this. I'm right of about 1 point or so. So if you take Joe Biden, let's say Joe Biden got 63, 64% of California's vote, Kamala Harris in 2024 got 57%. So
Wow.
Kamala Harris got a smaller percentage of California's vote than Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. And this is her home state. This isn't an adopted state. This is her home state. And the reason that that is important, because it shows how unpopular she was around the country. So the notion that, well, it was, you know, you heard her, Joy Reid is actually right about this. The bar for Black people, and definitely Black women too, is high. That's just a reality. That's not what, but that's not what happened here when you lose by a smaller margin than non-natives of your own state. There is no and in fact, because Donald Trump, and I think the numbers are 31-39, Donald Trump in 2020 got 31% of California's vote. That went up to 39% in California. That has nothing to do with racism, sexism. That has to do with the candidate and their unwillingness to concede. Now, I don't think that even though he still would have lost, I don't think that if Gavin Newsom was on the ticket, that Gavin Newsom would have gotten such a smaller share of California's vote than Kamala Harris. She is unique. She was a uniquely, and we talked about this, she was a uniquely bad candidate. It was clearly, as we saw with the results, it would be an uphill climb for any candidate, but she was really bad. She was over and over again bad.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the youth vote, Donald Trump got more of the youth vote going back to like 20 something years. If you look at the Black vote, he got the highest Black vote for the last 40 years. If you look at the Hispanic vote, he got more Hispanics than has ever been recorded for the Republican Party. If you're looking at the popular vote for the Republicans in the House, it is the highest total going back since 1928. So again, he had high coattails. She was uniquely bad. And as I pointed out on the show, she ran the race running around with Liz Cheney as if this was going to be something that wasn't going to demoralize her base. It's the weirdest thing in the world to believe that, yeah, this is exactly what the public wants. She put out Mark Cuban as her front person for this. She wouldn't deviate her policy on the issue of Gaza from the issue of Joe Biden. And then she's shocked that she lost the youth and the Muslim vote. The Muslim vote went to Jill Stein and to Trump as a punishment. And then if you look at I guess what I'm saying is she showed an inability to deviate from an administration that was already unpopular. And so this argument of I'm a new way forward is contradicted by her inability to dictate or explain what that new way is, or for that matter, what you would have done differently.
And so I, on the one hand, give her grace in the sense that it would be difficult for any employee to talk about how they're going to be different from their boss, and especially in a political campaign. So even though people have criticized her saying she doesn't talk about, I get why she wouldn't do it, and she wouldn't feel as if it's respectful to do it. I totally get that, but there's still a way that you can answer that question. You can talk about any number of things. For instance, she's a woman. She doesn't have to even talk about the fact that, well, because I'm a woman, I can do this. She can talk about women's issues, not just abortion, though. She can talk about health issues. She could talk about women in businesses. She could talk about a number of other things that she didn't have to necessarily say, because what people wanted her to say, I'm going to, stop all weapon shipments to Israel. Well, that's not going to happen. And there's a reason why she wouldn't say that. Donald Trump is not going to say that. Probably the only person who would say something like that is the Jill Stein, but they didn't win. So she wasn't going to say something like that. So there was only so much she was going to do to distance herself.
She can
From,
moderate her position, though. I mean, like,
but
nobody
she,
told her. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yes. No, but that's actually exactly what I was getting ready to say. But there is a way that you could moderate that position, even talking about immigration. She could talk about immigration with that. Now, it would be received as Kamala Harris takes a dig at Joe Biden, but you don't have to do direct attacks. Like, some of this stuff can be like very subtle,
Right.
but at least you're distancing herself. But because I always talked about political agility, because she does, like, Pete Buttigieg would have been able to distance it, would have been able to create some distance just because he's a good messenger. Gavin Newsom, he is Hollywood on steroids.
Oh, he is
Gavin
slick.
Newsom
Yeah.
he's slick enough, and it's the slickness. And you know, they say politics is dirty business.
Yeah.
It's the slickness. Kamala Harris doesn't have that slickness that a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama or even a Hillary Clinton, for that matter, has. It is a skill set. Not everybody has that skill set. And I think that the Democratic Party is doing itself a disservice and not talking also about candidate quality. If the message out of here is that it wasn't the process that we basically broke up by eliminating the primary season, starting with South Carolina. It wasn't anything that we did at the DNC. It wasn't anything that the campaign did. I mean, the same campaign that we now seeing are $20 million in debt.
After spending
$1 billion.
Wow.
That means that people were getting paid under the table. People were skimming. Oh my God. Probably what we're going to find out about their campaign expenditures, and we're seeing the reporting now. And I don't blame her for it, because that's how campaigns are. You know, when you're the principal, that there were problems with the campaign funds.
Well, real quick, to interject on this one. When you pointed out the Queen Latifah thing, Kamala Harris paid like $20 million for those musical asks, whether it was Katy Perry, whether it was Queen Latifah, whether it was Bebe,
Megan Thee Stallion,
the twerking. I think she lost with the twerking. I guess I'm saying for Joy-Ann Reid to be like, okay, this was a flawless campaign. Hell, she even had Queen Latifah to endorse her. She paid for that endorsement.
Yeah, that's a coping mechanism. That's a coping mechanism. Like, they don't want it's and I don't know if you remember me. I said a number of times when we had the show that this reminds me of 2006 all over again. I mean, 2016 all over again, where Donald Trump, they were convinced. And at this point, they weren't convinced that a carnival barker wouldn't win the presidency. They are convinced that the carnival barker, a convicted felon, a two-time impeached president of the United States, all of these other things that have happened since he left. Oh, an insurrectionist, a rapist, you know, a money launderer, like a fascist. They were convinced that all of those descriptors right there, he would not ever see the White House again. And so you have the Democratic Party, you have these people like yesterday, Don Lemon, a couple of times announced that he was leaving Twitter. First, it was a video, then it was a letter. And we're like, bro, that's fine. But there's now this, everybody's trying to leave Twitter, and not because of any. Now, according to Don Lemon, it is because Elon Musk, Twitter changed the terms of service. So now if you file a suit, it's going to be seen in the Northern District of Texas versus some other district of Texas. But they know that if Kamala Harris had won, they would not be leaving. They would not be leaving X. So this isn't about free speech. This isn't about how people view like the type of what they say it's promoting disinformation. They would be on that same site if Kamala Harris won. So that's why I don't even take these people seriously.
Yeah, like Facebook is not. Like Facebook is just the place for honesty and justice in the world. No, nonsense. What they wanted was Kamala Harris to win and then somehow adversely affect Twitter, because those guys were going to go after the First Amendment. John Kerry had already pointed it out. Clinton had already pointed it out. Kamala Harris had already pointed it out. We are losing the argument, and so we need to somehow change the mechanism by which people debate and discourse so we can have a better chance of winning the argument. And by the way, I agree with you. They are fundamentally not taking this well or accommodating why they actually lost. One of the other things I would argue is Democratic strategy. This strategy of ignoring your base in order to get Republicans. Like, as I pointed out the other day, election 101, get out your base. Get out the people who are most likely to vote for you. Get them effectively, efficiently out to the polls in order to vote for you. Harris' team decided, well, the left is too much work. They want healthcare and education. They want clean air and this type of stuff. And we got to go to rich people and ask them for money in order to run. And those rich people are not going to give us money to do that. So we hate this process. So if we reach out to moderate Republicans that are sick of Trump, then we have a better chance of winning. Now, this was Democratic policy going back for years. I want you to hear Chuck Schumer. You've probably heard this clip before, but I want you to listen to this clip in the context of the way Kamala Harris ran her campaign and see if this doesn't line up almost a one-to-one.
And it's already won a large percentage of those people over. On the other hand, Trump is so new that for every, this is the second point, for every blue-collar Democrat we will lose in Western PA, we will pick up 2, 3 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Illinois and Wisconsin. The voters who are most out.
That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. She lost Pennsylvania. She lost Wisconsin. She lost Michigan. Meaning these, states that were supposed to be the blue wall. She lost all of that stuff. And that was literally her policy. I mean, that was the entire point of having Liz Cheney on the campaign trail. We are going to reach out to moderate Republicans. We are going to reach out to moderate Republicans. All of this litany of this progression or procession of disgruntled Republicans that are sick of Trump. They're going to come and vote for Kamala Harris. That didn't work.
And it wasn't, and it was never going to work. When you build a campaign of resistance, and that resistance is centered, like it is isolated to one person. It is one thing if your resistance is against imperialism, if you're like it's against a system, the justice system, FBI, like whatever your issue is, it is one thing to be against that, but to be against a person. And what you saw, and it's an excellent point that you made about Republicans, because I didn't remember that clip. I didn't hear that clip. I didn't know that Chuck Schumer said that, but he could literally be transported into 2024 because that is the strategy. They're so convinced that Donald Trump is so detestable. He is so an unfit individual that there is no way possible that he could win the presidency. And so if we amplify these Republicans, that could appeal to those in the suburbs. But who were you amplifying? You were amplifying Liz Cheney. Like you weren't amplifying, like because George Bush smartly refused. George W. Bush refused. It didn't matter when Nicole Wallace implored him days leading up to the election is that you have to say something. George Bush said, no, I'm not. You can assume what you want to assume, but I, George W. Bush, am not getting in this. And so who did they amplify? So Mike Steele was already, they couldn't use him no more because Mike Steele this has been Mike Steele's shtick for years. So what Republican could they use? They couldn't use the 50+1 intelligence officials. Well,
that guy came out recently, by the way. One of those came out going after Trump, effectively saying that the CIA and members of the intel should ignore the orders of the president.
Yes, and this is what they did when they were president of. I mean, when Donald Trump was actually in office. This unelected bureaucrats undermining a president of the United States. Now, I just think that is a no-go. I don't care what country it is or whatever. If you feel as if that you cannot align yourself with the work of a particular president or a company or something, then you just need to leave. And I think but they don't want to do it because they want to keep those contracts and those security clearances. But the idea that a Liz Cheney, I mean, of all Republicans, they were And Kamala Harris, and it's another thing. It's something else to say, I have the support from Republicans. No, she just didn't stop there. She said, I'm going to campaign around the country with Republicans, meaning she's going to be my wing woman, like my wingman, like Tim Walsh was in that first interview that she gave on
security blanket.
her security blanket. So you're literally going around, and the only thing that is being talked about is that Liz Cheney isn't talking about, I know that she will be a strong defender on these policies. No. When you saw Liz Cheney going to these events, it wasn't amplifying Kamala Harris's policies. It was, she will stop Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. That was it. So even in that, I have Republicans supporting me, it wasn't for anything other than you are the person who could stop Donald Trump. So to use them as a weapon in the campaign, well, that wasn't even a weapon it wasn't even a trickle in the stream. Like it did the same thing that the Lincoln Project did in 2020. They had no impact on the election in 2020, much like Republicans now. And I imagine that we won't see this for the next Democrat nominee, that we have Republicans in our corner here. You won't see that
question coming up, right? Like, where do they go? I don't have an answer for that question. And even people I brought on the show, no one really had an answer for that question. I mean, you had some Democratic operatives like Bakari Sellers, who's like, Joe Biden should step down and make Kamala Harris president. And it's like, so she loses a race on a massive effing level where the American public definitively says, we don't like her, we don't want her. And your response is, F the American public, we're just going to put her in anyway. Okay, good luck with that. Then the other thought was, well, we should get rid of Sotomayor and stick Kamala Harris on the Supreme Court bench. It's like, okay, so you want Sotomayor to lose her job because Kamala Harris couldn't run in the race and win? Okay, good luck with that. It's so, like, they seem to be bewildered in this. And I guess my thing is, like, these suggestions are so out there, right? It's like these are such Hail Mary passes that we're never going to fly, never going to pass, and you're going to use your limited airtime on CNN to say some nonsense like this. Where do they go now? I legit don't have an answer for it. It's not like they have a coalition. And I'm realizing too, that they really didn't even have much for Obama. Obama was just a talented politician. Like, because if you think about it, Democratic policy hasn't radically shifted since Obama. Obama was just magnetic. Like, he just had a gravitas about him. What is your thoughts?
So think of periods. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and when I'm saying this, what they represented: Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and then you have Donald Trump. I think they all represent similar things as far as being generational-ish figures. The Reagan movement, the Clinton movement, the Obama, and it is just them. It is only attached to them. And I think that we've seen, even over the years, that you may try to run as Trump-like, Carrie Lake, but you're not Donald Trump. And I think that this movement is so centered around Donald Trump, in the same way that the Democrat Party, the last leader that they had is Barack Obama. I think that, first of all, when you're asking where does the Democratic Party go now? Well, Barack Obama is not even, but he's definitely just a figurehead at this point. It's clear now he has no juice like that. Even when Barack Obama was president of the United States, he didn't have long coattails. If you go back and look at when they got the shellacking in 2010,
the other
Barack
Democrats,
Obama hasn't. Yes, and I think a similar thing will happen with Trump once he leaves. Like, all of that momentum, even the MAG, all of that is going out of the door with Donald Trump. And I think because the Democratic Party hadn't found its new era of leadership since Barack Obama, that there's going to be a void. So they're going to be in the wilderness for a while. And if, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their DNC chair. Think about Jamie Harris. I mean, the fact that this guy, he, in a race that they spent almost $100 million that he lost against Lindsey Graham, They elevate him to DNC chair, and so the red wave was delayed by 2 years.
Right.
So
right. I mean, not just delayed. I mean, they lost it all. House, Senate, presidency, Supreme Court, they got shellacked, to put it clearly. And I think they took the wrong message from the last race. Their thought was, well, Joe Biden is great. Democratic Party brand is great. Missing the fact that, no, you guys just went on to the issue of abortion. It was very specific. When you take that to a larger context, that doesn't work. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yep. That was state by state. And I'm glad you mentioned abortion because there had been some successes, at least on the abortion issue between 2022 and 2024. I totally understand that. They misread the tea leaves, though, because while that is applicable for, while that's an issue in, maybe Ohio or a place like that, if you live in Oregon, if you live in Washington, D.C., if you live in Maryland, if you live in New York, abortion protections are already enshrined into your state laws. So that you may not be as concerned about abortion access in Oklahoma. I mean, because you have it. The expectation that it was such a national galvanizing issue, they misread the tea leaves on that. And we saw in a number of those states, I mean, Donald Trump, and the thing, he just didn't win, he won every single battleground state.
Do you know he gained in 49 states? In every state, with the exception of, I think, Washington, he gained in numbers.
DC, Washington, DC. And so there are two things. So we go with Pennsylvania. Donald Trump in 2020 got 7% of the Black vote in Pennsylvania. In 2000, this time around, he got 10%. Just a small bump. But when you dig into those numbers and you see that in 2020, Donald Trump got 10% of the Black male vote, he got 26% of the Black male vote in Pennsylvania. When you look at places, even little small pockets here in Washington, D.C., live in Ward 8 here in Washington, D.C. Now, overall, Donald Trump got, I think, 3% of the vote. In 2020, he got about 5% of the vote just in DC. But in Ward 8, DC's most under-resourced, blackest, underrepresented ward, Donald Trump got, I think, 3.2% of the vote in 2020. Donald Trump got about 6.5% of the vote. So when you look at that, so when you talk about him increasing his margins, that's what people mean. It didn't mean that he got that, he never reached that, 50% that people were saying. That's not even as important as Donald Trump in areas all around the country and that's what helped him with the popular vote, being able to shave off some of those margins in a place like Pennsylvania, in a place like California. It actually, at the end of the day, mattered.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, man. Wait, one last thing before I let you go. What do you think about his appointments so far?
Oh my gosh. I was going to bring it up anyway.
I think some of these people are just utterly insane. The guy, Pete Hegseth, the one who they're using for secretary of defense, thank you, Hegseth. That is so disturbing to me. Tulsi Gabbard, I like. John Ratcliffe, I don't hate for that position. Ratcliffe had been pretty decent on transparency issues and stuff like that. And he was one of those people pushing against Trump and Russia stuff. Give me your take. What are your thoughts on some of these people?
So my eyebrow was raised on Pete Hegseth. I was like, what? A Fox News host? I mean, I get people talk about his experience, his Bronze Stars or whatever he got. And now people are talking about, which ironically, he went to Harvard or wherever he went. Now Ivy League degrees matter. But I don't like Pete Hegseth in this role simply because I look at the function of government in a very different way. And even though he may have opinions about how the military is run, what I don't like is that a lot of the discussion about him is that he's going to get the woke out of the military. Well, I don't need the defense secretary. I don't need that to be his focus because your focus actually has to be more globally than getting the woke out of the military. You can actually get an executive director to do that type of stuff.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I am willing to hold my nose on a Pete Hegseth. But Matt Gaetz, oh,
I'm super interested. Oh, I wanted to get your take on Gaetz. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think of the Gaetz thing? So, because people, they were asking, I forget who they asked. What is the guy? The one that fought the Israeli lobby, Massey. Massey was walking through the halls, and they said, "What do you think about it?" He was like, "Get over it," or something like that. Basically, that's the choice. Get over it. You got to suck that up. Give me your take on Matt Gaetz for this role. I know you're not a big fan of Matt Gaetz.
Don't like Matt Gaetz at all. I don't think he should be rewarded in this way. I'm wondering, is this some type of plan by Donald Trump? Because from what we understand, up until yesterday morning, Matt Gaetz wasn't even on the list. Somehow they're on the plane together, and then all of a sudden Matt Gaetz is the choice. I don't like this one at all, and I would be surprised if he is even confirmed. But Donald Trump has to know that too. He has to know that you're going to have at least 3, and we've already gotten the 3, possibly more GOP senators, because he's not going to get the support of any Democrat. So Donald Trump had to build that in, that he wouldn't get a number of Senate support. So either Matt Gaetz is his representative, where he was saying that we need to be able to make recess appointments, something that I don't think the Senate is still ultimately going to go for, or Donald Trump wanted to get him out of this ethics investigation where they were scheduled to meet on this Friday. So Matt Gaetz ended up resigning before the upcoming meeting on Friday, tomorrow, about his ethics investigation. So everybody's saying, well, maybe he can be, if his nomination is pulled, he can, the special election is not until January 3rd. So he won the election. So therefore he could. That's just not how it works. Matt Gaetz has officially resigned from Congress. Ron DeSantis has already started the process of a special election. Matt Gaetz doesn't get to rescind his resignation. That's just not how it works. So like I say, I would be surprised if Matt Gaetz wins and get confirmed with all of the stuff that's going to be coming out about him. And because Matt Gaetz has not made any friends, and that's a problem that he has, you'll see a number of people who are Matt Gaetz, because they don't want to be turned off. They don't want to offend Donald Trump. But you got people who, as they say, DAGF, they don't anymore. Mitch McConnell's retiring.
That's right. John Jones has won a seat, right?
Chuck Grassley retiring. What's his name? Lisa Murkowski. She don't care. Senator Collins, she don't care. I can't remember I can't pronounce the guy's name, but he was the one who came out, Senator something, and said that about the conversation that he had when Matt Gaetz first came to the Congress, and he made some very womanizing remarks about one. Basically said, look at that bitch, she's a fine one. Mark Karski or whatever his name. So he's probably going to be a no. So I don't see how Matt Gaetz actually gets confirmed. And of all of the cabinet appointments thus far, Matt Gaetz is by far the worst pick. Like I say, I can hold my nose on a Pete Hegseth, because at the end of the day, I know that Donald Trump don't have a problem getting rid of people, but Matt Gaetz, I was happy when John Thune won, because it was a demonstration to me that the MAGA wing, the Freedom Caucus wing, won't have the pull that they think that they would have, because they were all behind Rick Scott, Elon Musk, all of them. Rick Scott. The United States Senate said, that's just not how this works. You won't bully us. And at the end of the day, Rick Scott didn't even make it the first time around. I think that Matt Gaetz is some type of signal to, I don't know where Matt Gaetz comes from, and nobody seems to be able to explain. I don't, out of all the picks, and we're still waiting on HHS secretary. I hear that Carson is in the running for that. We don't, well, that's HHS. So remember, he was over HUD.
Yeah, he was over HUD.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you keep
Yes,
sticking?
so,
Well, I guess he was a doctor.
HHS,
So I guess it does make more sense.
HHS would be he should have never been at HUD.
Yeah, the HUD
HHS
thing's
was
weird.
always a better home for Carson simply because him running the Johns Hopkins systems, like and HHS actually has the largest budget of the entire federal government, followed by the Pentagon. I think HHS budget is like 1.3 trillion or something. Wow. So we're still waiting on HHS secretary. We're still waiting on agriculture, HUD, Department of Transportation, Department of Treasury, Department of Commerce. So we still have a ways to go. And I imagine since he released, and another thing, and I know we're going to go, what I will say is what you're seeing this time around is that it does seem to be a prepared Donald Trump. Like there is and when you've done it before, I guess that does give you an advantage, but it was clear Donald Trump had a plan that he wanted to execute, and and to be doing that within a week's time, naming your cabinet appointments and all of that. Fortunately, a number of them, like a Marco Rubio, won't have a problem.
What do you think about Rubio, by the way, as Secretary of State?
So
Tulsi Gabbard has been agitating against this pretty heavily.
Well, which is why I'm glad that Marco Rubio is there. I'm not necessarily, the only reason I don't like Tulsi Gabbard in the cabinet is because she just became a Republican yesterday. So I don't know where.
See, I love her in this position because, from my point of view, yeah, go ahead.
I think she would be good in the position. That's the only reason, because I'm like, a Republican should have been rewarded with that. But I'm not opposed to her at all. Like I'm not opposed to Marco Rubio. I know that I'm not going to be a fan, basically, of no one's foreign policy. But I'm willing. For me, at least Marco Rubio, for one, has the experience in Congress that a Pete Hegseth, even though he just doesn't have to lead, of all departments, the Department of Defense. But I can hold my nose with that. But
do you think this is a betrayal? Like, meaning Donald Trump came in and says, I'm going to be a peacemaker. I'm going to end wars, not start wars. And some of the people he's putting in are hardcore neocons. I mean, Marco Rubio, what was the other woman named? Elise Stefanik, Hegseth. Hegseth wanted to bomb Iran. He wanted to attack. Like, that guy has screw loose in regards to the things that
it's going to be the balance, because he had to have some of them, even though no people would describe them as establishment. Well, essentially they are. So he had to have an element of the establishment in his cabinet, the neocons. He was going to have to be able to allay some of the concerns that people had about his candidacy. I mean, about what another Trump term would look like. So I could see, as people would describe them, him having both the Zionists, but then on the other hand, you look at people like a Tulsi Gabbard, and that's in a much different direction. But I still don't think, this balancing, some of these people are definitely pro Israel, but they also question our commitment in Ukraine. And in that sense, I think in that sense, someone like a Tulsi Gabbard would be good. Marco Rubio probably be just full-throated in his support for Ukraine, but there are voices around him who will question that. And at the end, and I'll say at the end, he should have just went ahead and just named this duo, this dynamic duo, that they were appointed to the Presidential Commission on Government Excess.
Oh, you know, Vivek and Elon.
Because you literally just made up a position. There is this is not an agency. It isn't how you don't create agencies by name. That's just not how it works. This is going to be an unpaid position. They'll be able to get a West Wing pass to probably come to DC whenever they want to. But I think this was an effort to, this was, you know what? I'm going to give you a position in the White House, but you really don't have to do anything. I'm not in no way convinced that all of these trillions of I am in no way convinced that within a year and a half, they're going to be able to find even $50 billion in waste in the federal, even though it's there.
Yeah.
I doubt very seriously that they're going to be able to find $1 trillion in government waste within a year and a half. It's not going to happen. So this is just something for them to do.
Before I let you go.
Mm-hmm.
You have helped run campaigns. And in running those campaigns, I would imagine you've seen how people spend money and everything else. Is there going to be any kind of soul searching and questions about, okay, we spent $1 billion in 3 months and we have nothing to show for it? Like how like the consultancy and stuff like that stuff is mind blowing to me. Like when Bloomberg got in, Bloomberg spent $1 billion on a primary. Okay, that was during the entire primary. That was like 6-7 months. Kamala Harris spent $1 billion in a month. I mean, in 3 months, and left $20 million in debt after the fact. Apparently, she wanted Alanis Morissette, and the check bounced, so Alanis Morissette didn't show up. Like how? Like is that a consultant issue? Is that her not managing her money right? How does the money flow work? How are determinations made in regards to what you purchase, the direction that you go, the money that you spend on it? How do they make those decisions? Because I would imagine that is going to be brought to account.
That's the campaign manager. But I think one of the biggest thing coming out of this is that, and you've heard some people who've worked with the campaign say this, is that they now realize that they're going to have to run a different type of campaign because they ran a traditional campaign. If you think of what Barack Obama did in 2008, Barack Obama didn't run a traditional political campaign. He changed the game. Social media helped him because, he's like the first social media president, if you will. Right. Donald Trump changed it this time around because they were so focused. And I talked about it on the show at the time when we had the show, that they were so focused on data. So you mentioned those voters. Now, what they titled them, they called them low propensity voters. What the Trump campaign was already doing is identifying those voters, meaning the ones who don't turn out in every election cycle, turning those voters out. So Democrats, they didn't do that. They focused on, and you heard them say, well, in Pennsylvania, we knocked on 1.5 million doors. Because that's what campaigns do. You knock on doors. But it didn't work. So they're going to have to revamp their strategy, their get out to vote strategy that we always talked about. They're going to have to revamp their get out to vote strategy because the traditional, even from a media perspective, what they call the podcast, they call them some other name now. But like even that type of stuff, there is a benefit in going into those type of audience. So there are going to be a lot of people who will never, mainly Jennifer Palmieri or whatever her name is, who Jennifer was Kamala Harris's campaign manager. There are going to be a lot of people who will not be working on another political campaign again, simply because of how much money they went through with this campaign and what they were telling people, what they were articulating publicly was not aligned with what they were saying privately. Now we're hearing that the campaign had known for some time just how bad it had been doing in these areas, but they weren't communicating that in the campaign. Those people will never, those people won't have a job again.
They told people that they were going to win. And some of the people who were giving them money, supporting them and everything else, she was like, I got people to give that campaign money. They reported to us that they were winning and that they were going to win it up until the point where they lost. And she was like, I am accountable to all of these people and you effectively lied to me. So just mind blowing, man. Malik, man, you are always welcome. Malik Abdul, political analyst, writer, Republican strategist with over 15 years of public and private sector experience, and my co-host on the previous iteration of Fault Lines. Thanks, man.
I know, right? All right, take care now. All right.
Say, excellent. Malik Abdul. Always appreciate Malik when he comes on, and his analysis is often spot on. Him and I follow on different parts of the electoral thing, but I appreciate his point of view. Oftentimes he tends to be earnest when he's giving his take, and that I appreciate. Before we close it and go into the next segment, I want to get some of these. Sparky, Trump seems to think that he can play good cop, bad cop with his appointments, but it'll be even less effective now than it was in his first term. That I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, some of these people, like I said, are lunatics. Like Hegseth, the sociopath. Some of the stuff that he's been saying, that is not the temperament that you want for a Department of Defense. At least not, you're talking about killing people, war and peace. Do you really want a Fox News person to be, do you think that a Fox News host that is somewhat bombastic has the capes to be in that particular position? I don't think so. Janice Anderson, seems like every lie Jay says pushes her hairline back. Oh, too funny. LEJJ USA, Zionists and Jews are not the same. No, they're not. No, they're not. There's a difference in those things. Do not confuse the two. Super sticker. Thank you for that. What's the name? Trash Panda. Thank you, Trash Panda. No, those things are different. Those things are very different. Zionist is a political ideology. It wants to kind of believe that that is their homeland. They can take it and create this kind of greater Israel stuff. Not every Jew believes that. In fact, we've had, I can't think of his name, him on the show that made the point of saying the Zionists don't even like Jews. It's a fascinating conversation on that stuff. But no, those things are very different. That's why it's so dangerous trying to say that being against Zionism is anti-Semitic. Nonsense. Nonsense. One is a political ideology. The other one is like saying, it's racist to be against Democrats or something. It's not the same. Sparky, the eschatologists like Pompeo, Bolton, Huckabee, Hegseth are nuts. They are. Israel likely installed Hegseth at Princeton, then at Fox News because of his beliefs in the hopes that he would someday be of use. Well, I don't know if they're installing anybody anywhere. I mean, if it wasn't Hegseth, there'd be some other lunatic on Fox News saying something similar that Donald Trump could put in that position. I don't think he has to be installed anywhere. In fact, I don't think, look, I have a tendency to believe that there's going to be somebody taking a slot either way you look at it. Whether it's Hegseth, whether it's Bob Cobb, whether it's Rando Guy, they would have found some lunatic to be in that spot to say those things. And Donald Trump would have found a lunatic to take that spot. He was paid $100 million to do so, so that's what he did. Whether it was Hegseth or somebody else, he would have found him. I mean, for God's sake, he would have scoured the country. It's a country of 320 million people. Trust me, there are plenty of lunatics here. Zionists own Israel and the USA. For your information, LEJJ USA. I don't know. I don't know if it's the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail. What I mean by that is, I know Joe Biden behind the scenes grumbles. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, this is so horrible. Oh, I can't believe they're forcing me to do this. I know he's doing that behind the scenes. But how do you know that's true? Meaning, how do you know that Joe Biden is not just taking a political disposition to get from point A to point B purely for political expedience, because he knows that the majority of the country is against arming what they consider to be a genocide or ethnic cleansing, or at the very least, wanton, indiscriminate murder of women and children? And so it's very possible that Joe Biden has zero issues or zero qualms with what Netanyahu is doing, either going into Lebanon. I mean, after all, look at who he chose as his envoy for Lebanon. The guy used to be an IDF soldier. Joe Biden chose a former IDF soldier as his envoy to Lebanon as the IDF is murdering Lebanese en masse. And put this in perspective, just so you know what I'm talking about here. This just took place yesterday, right here. This is Naval Airport. Commercial plane. Israel is bombing near the plane. Here's another one. Here's another one. Right here. Yeah, that's a camp. That's just the camp. Those are just people in a camp. They're bombing tents. If you're wondering why so many kids are being murdered, it's for stuff like that. They're just bombing camps, bombing tents. They're just wanton murder. Hegseth, Rubio, Huckabee, all of the people that Donald Trump chose, that Marianne Adelson gave Donald Trump $100 million to choose, believes that that level of wanton destruction is okay. That is terrifying. That is terrifying. So there's that. Here's another one. Israel has deleted far more U.S. citizens than Iran has. Remember the USS Liberty, where they deleted 34 alone. Sparky, the word you look for is murder. They slaughtered American soldiers on the USS Liberty. They have slaughtered Americans in Gaza, and our administration has done nothing about it. Nothing about it at all. In fact, I want to go to another point before my guest comes on. Joe Biden interfered with this election. Joe Biden interfered with this election. So if you remember when Joe Biden was running against Trump, and it was the October surprise, and that October surprise was effectively the laptop thing. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Hunter Biden laptop. Well, all of this information that was on that laptop was talking about all of these business deals, all of these relationships that Hunter Biden had around the world while Joe Biden was president. It looked extremely salacious, to put it mildly, especially with all of the, let's say, the videos aside of Hunter Biden doing crack or messing around with prostitutes. The issue, more so than anything else, was the business relationships that seemed to be taking place on this notion of Biden Inc. He's sitting here, I'm sitting here with my father, and I want $20 million from you, or else. It's like, well, how are you doing or else anything? You're talking about political clout. You're just Hunter Biden. How do you have political clout? But the political clout was because he was sitting there next to his father. My dad knows about these deals. My dad is vice president of the United States, and you will piss me and my dad off if you don't give me the money. Or Joe Biden saying, I have no idea anything that my son does. And then you find out in the emails that Joe Biden was at those meetings with Hunter Biden and other business associates. Now, this is not like in the movies where you get two people sitting across the table says, I need this much money. And they say, okay, when you get the money, are you going to do this? Yes, I'm going to do this when you give me the money. Usually it's more diffuse than that. Hunter Biden makes a deal. Joe Biden sits at the table. And you know, because Joe Biden is sitting at the table, vice president, that his kid has the heft that he's claiming that he has. It's influence. It's him using and leveraging Joe Biden's name and influence in order to get various business deals that the rest of the family will be able to benefit from. It's an influence operation. When Donald Trump outed that laptop on the debate stage, what did Joe Biden say? 51 intelligence officials said this is not true. They said this was Russian disinformation. Now, you find out later, A, the laptop was legit. B, what was in the laptop was also legit. It was legitimately his laptop. C, 51 intelligence officials lied. And not just lied, they lied on a massive world stage to the American public to deceive that American public going to the 2020 election. All right. Joe Biden knows that Kamala Harris is drowning on the issue of Gaza and Palestine. He knows, he can see it. You can look at Michigan. She loses Michigan, Wisconsin. She loses Dearborn by God knows how many amount. Jill Stein, who typically gets 0.003%, like a nanovote under normal circumstances, ends up winning the Muslim vote, followed by Trump, with lagging behind Harris. Now, if you look at Dearborn, back during the time that Joe Biden ran, Joe Biden was able to get 76%, I believe, of the Muslim vote. Give or take, it might have been 72, but 72, 76% of the Muslim vote. Harris gets around 30-something%. Joe Biden knows that this is a problem. We are backing a genocide. The candidate who's running is running in a race where people are calling it a genocide. So I need to somehow deviate my point of view from that of Trump, meaning I need to show some kind of daylight between these things. Trump is vociferous that he's going to do any and everything in his power to help Netanyahu and give Israel whatever it wants to murder and maim and slaughter as many people as they can see fit to do so. So I need to create a left, a space. So Joe Biden, a month before the election, comes out and puts out this. U.S. warns Israel to increase aid or face consequences. You've killed too many people. You're not getting the aid that we want. You got to do something different. Now, me and everybody else that was paying attention said, this is nonsense. They're not going to make any adjustments. They're not going to make any changes. They're putting this out there purely for electoral consumption. They're trying to make it look as if, see, the Biden administration and the Harris administration are really doing something. They actually do care about this issue, and they may do something different if you vote for them in the election. So we are going to put this out, and we're going to warn Israel, hey, allow people to eat, stop starving people, or else. Now, the fact that they put this out means that they know Israel is starving the population. By our own laws, we are not supposed to be engaging with Israel if they are not using the humanitarian assistance, and they are basically starving the population by our own laws. The Biden administration are ignoring our own laws on that and on nuclear weapons. Fast forward to after the election. And you get this. Blinken declines against changing military assistance to Israel. It was a scam. It was a scam. It was purely done to try to make Kamala Harris look good just before the election, to make it look as if they were doing something, that they were actually working towards some objective, that they were putting pressure on Israel in a way that they hadn't done for the entirety of the year. Everybody who were paying attention knew that A, they didn't mean it, and B, it was used purely to interfere with the election, to make it look like there was some daylight between Trump's position, Harris's position, when in actuality there was not. Because Harris' position is just Joe Biden's position, which is as hard right on this issue as you can get. This was the video that came out the other day when the press, very annoyed, some may say even angry, that all things being equal, they felt like they were being lied to. And they felt like they were being lied to because they were being lied to. This is Patel when asked about whether or not there were going to be changes to Israeli policy. Right here.
Why it's not 350, according to your assessment?
So again, I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole of specific truck numbers. What our point of view is that some of these operational changes that they have made, that I have outlined in great detail now at this point, we believe that it should be possible to increase the number of trucks that makes it into Gaza every day. It is now incumbent upon the government of Israel, the United Nations, and others, now that there are these operational changes that we think can help with throughput, can help with delivery within Gaza, that can help with getting the aid where it needs to go. Our hope is that with those changes, we can see that number achieved.
Before you move to Lebanon, can I just ask you, why did you bother to put in 350 trucks a day if it doesn't matter?
I'm not going to speak to the...
I mean, you keep saying you're not going to speak to specific metrics, but you guys are the ones that made this specific. We didn't.
To be clear why he's upset. Because what they pointed out is like, dude, you said that you wanted 300 trucks a day. They are not putting in 300 trucks a day. And because they're not putting in 300 trucks a day, and we've come back to you now after your 30 days is over with, and we have said, are you going to make any adjustments to the way you're engaging with Israel, with the money, the weapons, and everything else? And you are now saying you are not, despite the fact that they have made no changes. So when we bring this up and say, well, they're only getting 30 or less a day, that's assuming they're even getting that much. You now don't want to talk about the metrics. Now the metrics is not something that you want to engage in or, talk about, despite the fact that you set the metric. You set that metric. Didn't come out of the blue. My point is they did this purely to interfere with the election. This was entirely done to make it look as if there was some kind of daylight between the positions from the Biden administration versus Trump to say, we are actually doing something on this issue. See, we gave them a 30-day notice. They waited for a year. And then 30 days out to the election, put this out. And they knew goddamn well that under no circumstances were they going to make any changes. It was just to try to make Kamala Harris look on some level better. It was a scam. It was a scam. Our guest is here. So let's do this. Let's reset. In fact, we don't have to reset. Just bring her on right now. There you are. Welcome to the show. We are joined with the one and only Jennifer Perlman. She is attorney, activist, born and raised in South Florida. She's a community advocate, two-time grassroots congressional candidate. She focuses on issues regarding social, economic, environmental justice. She supports domestic policies such as universal health care, tuition-free higher education, and a federal jobs guarantee. And she is a friend of this show. Jennifer, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? It's good to see you.
It is good to see you. I don't think I've seen you since the election results. I've been asking people every time they've come on the show, what do you think about the results? I've asked everybody that because I've been super curious about how people have been accommodating this stunning loss. I mean, she didn't just lose the vote. She lost even the popular vote, which, again, hasn't happened going back to 2004. Give me your take on this race. What do you think about it?
Actually, I predicted this exactly.
Mhm.
I said, and there are many episodes of us talking about this, and I don't know that I publicly said that he'll also win the popular vote, but I told people like that I know, like I knew that she was going to lose bigly. And so it wasn't at all surprising to me. I think that a lot of the polls and the numbers were made up. I don't think she was ever in the running. I think that they kind of knew it and they were just trying to like make it be, I don't know. But then again, I've always thought
I so disagree. I so disagree with you on this. I think
you think she was actually a contender.
I think the polls were fantastic because I tell you this, on the election night, I went and did a video and I just went through and I said, all right, I'm going to show you my map. And I went through from state by state to put out what I believe it was going to end up as. I used the polls for it. I mean, if you're looking at if you were looking at, for example, Michigan, you could see that Trump was in lead for the last several weeks, like the last week or so. It trended up towards Trump and it stayed there. Like it wasn't like flipping back and forth. It just stayed there. Same thing with, I wasn't certain about Pennsylvania, but I was certain about Pennsylvania. I gave Pennsylvania to Trump because again, it trended there. I wasn't sure about Michigan. Like the polls were going in a direction and she started off I'm being scattered. Let me consolidate.
Well, I wanted to say, when I talk about like the polls not being real, I mean everything that put her as being popular in the beginning. Like I never thought she had a base. I always thought the K-Hive was made believe, like just a bunch of paid bots or whatever. And that's what I mean. Like there's no hype to her. And I knew that whatever numbers she showed would all fall. And any sort of I don't know. I felt like the Democrats were trying to make it be like she was so competitive, but I always thought that there was no chance for her.
In the beginning, I thought she was. Because I think what happened was, Joe Biden was going to get beaten in a landslide. Like he was going to get crushed. And she comes in and all of a sudden these Democrats that weren't paying attention, that were disgruntled with Joe Biden, all of a sudden they're like, oh, good, we have something new. We have something new. Great. And so it was like, okay, she's younger. She's a person of color. She's a woman. She has new energy. This is going to be something different. And then at some point it becomes clear, like, okay, Kamala Harris, what would you have done differently? Nothing.
She has nothing.
Yeah, she has nothing. And at that point it became like, okay, so this is just Joe Biden in a skirt. This is not what we want. So I think in the very beginning, she had a chance. I think when you saw the polling.
But no one liked her in 20. No one liked her in 20. Give me 1 second. I have to let someone in the house. 1 second.
No, you're perfectly fine. No, you're perfectly right. In the very beginning, from my point of view, when she first gets into the race, people think it's this excitement because Joe Biden was so bad. And they thought, thank God, there's somebody different. She's younger. She's a person of color. Good. She has more energy. This is something that we can work with. And I think it's not that Democrats loved her. As I used to point out before, there was no Joe Biden coalition, meaning there wasn't this group of Democrats that loved Joe Biden in the way that they would love a Sanders or they would love a Trump or they would love an Obama. You just had Democrats who were terrified and hated Trump. And that in and of itself became somewhat of a coalition. Okay, fair enough. But that is different than having a coalition that are willing to fight, that's willing to get up and push and everything else. Those are different things. So from my point of view, Oh, there you are. You're back. From my point of view, in the very beginning, there was a certain energy from her campaign just because she was new. And that newness was enough to bring Democrats who weren't paying attention, who weren't all that plugged in, back into the fold. It's not that they loved her. It's not that they even loved Joe Biden. They just hated Trump. And you just got the Democratic base getting involved. The moment that it became clear, she's running around fighting on transnational gangs. That was one of her platforms. She's running around with Liz Cheney, talking about, defensive issues as if the public agrees with her on it. And, things like healthcare, education, expansion of Social Security, expansion of Medicaid, like those are lefty issues. That stuff wasn't even on the table. Like it wasn't even talked about. It wasn't even part of the discussion. Her argument was Donald Trump is a racist, menace, sexual abuser. He's Hitler. He's a fascist. And they're going to shoot Liz Cheney in the face. That was their argument. Just outrageous.
Yes. I mean, I think that, there was this initial buzz about her because people were so over Joe at that point, and he was just so clearly not capable. But then it very quickly came to we were very quickly reminded why she didn't win a single primary vote in 20. Right. I mean, the reality is this is someone who really was not popular ever. Right. So this isn't somebody that really people got behind and liked because she didn't win a single primary vote. So I just think that it wasn't long before people caught on that there's no there there. There's no there there.
Yeah, there's no there there is part of the way to put it. From your point of view, I mean, how do you think she could have ran this in a different way that would have gave her more bang for the buck? I mean, because if you look at it, she didn't just lose. Trump was able to gain in 49 states. 49 states. Trump was able to get the highest black vote in like 40 years. He was able to get the highest Hispanic vote ever. He was able to even get white women as a majority in regards to the voting thing. Like, is there any way that you think she could have did this differently, that she could have changed the context of this race?
I mean, well, first, let me preface this with yes. I mean, clearly they could have run to the left instead of to the right. Like they were so clearly courting Republican voters as opposed to left voters. It's always so interesting to me when people like pundits on CNN and stuff say they ran to the left. In what left? Like all of her commercials were about anti-immigration, her most lethal military in the world statement, all of the things that she's been focusing on, other than I'm not Trump, have been very right-wing issues. And I'm talking right of Ronald Reagan right. So, they could sit there and say that it's the over woke stuff, but the reality is that is not what they campaigned on and who they campaigned to. That might be what they fundraise on. I mean, let's be real. They fundraise on the woke issues because they sort of pink wash everything and make it be like, oh, well, we're good to the LGBTQ. But no, they ran to the right. They were trying to appeal to the right. They were trying to say, screw you, we don't need the left.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that is what they prefer. And this is something I don't think is a Kamala thing. First of all, I think that this vote was going to go this way, really regardless of whether it was Joe or Kamala. I really predicted it being this way regardless. And most of what I think is that just fuck you vote isn't so much against Kamala, but against the Democratic Party. And I think that people are just so fed up with being lied to by them that they're kind of like, you know what? The Republicans at least say they're screwing us, right? Like Trump, at least it's, not that I like him. Again, not a proponent. But I think that this was a referendum on the party.
Agreed.
And I think that what we saw was the party do exactly what it does, what it did in 16. I knew they were rehashing 16 all over. And I do think Kamala is a Hillary tool. I've thought that since they recruited her in 2017 and they realized the only way to get her in was as VP because nobody really liked her. I mean, I think this has been a long time in the making. And I think those people, and we've seen this, they've proven this. I don't even have to theorize. They prefer Trump to progressive or Bernie or leftist part of their party. So they are only going to those people are infinitely better off with Trump than they would be if they had allowed Bernie, right? So they think of it from, if we appeal to the right and they don't come over, well, fine, the right wins, we win either way. And their stock portfolios all grow together, right?
Well,
So that's what
Yeah, of course, Chris Matthews said that, right? He was like, Sanders will take the party for a generation. Maybe it's better to lose to Trump. And if you look at let me get your take on something. I have this, I think that what Kamala Harris did, and I think what the Democratic Party did, because I agree with you, that this is a referendum on Biden, Harris, and the party as a whole. It's not just the individual candidate in the way that they're trying to say, well, we were blameless in this whole process.
Yeah.
That even going back several years ago, even with the Hillary Clinton thing, I think they hate progressives. And I think they hate the fact that they need that base in order to win elections, whatever that 10, 15% or whatever that number is, that from their point of view, it is such a pain in the ass to have to beg rich people for money, because progressives, they want healthcare, they want education, they want people to be able to go to school for free. They want these things. We don't want to really have to supply these things. And we get sick of going to the rich to beg them for money for stuff that they don't want to push for. It is so hard to run a race like that. So if we can get conservatives, if we can get moderate Republicans that are disenchanted with Trump, we can marginalize the effectiveness or the need for the progressives in our constituency. And the reason I say that, this is something that Chuck Schumer put out. And I want you to think of this in the context of the way Kamala Harris ran the race and tell me whether or not this is a one-to-one with what Chuck Schumer is saying here.
And it's already won a large percentage of those people over. On the other hand, Trump is so new that for every, this is the second point, for every blue-collar Democrat we will lose in Western PA, we will pick up 2, 3 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And you can repeat that in Ohio and Illinois and Wisconsin. The voters who are most out there figuring out what to do are not the blue-collar Democrats. They are the...
They lost all those states, by the way.
Yep.
They lost all those states.
I did not predict that she would lose every swing state. I was hoping. Yeah. I was hoping. And again, let me be clear. I am by no means happy Trump won, but I am happy that she lost. And I wanted them to lose bigly. And this, in a lot of ways, also for me was sort of like a referendum on what they did to Bernie in 2016. And there was never a reckoning for that. There was never any comeuppance for what they did to Bernie. And, you know, they need to go away. I'm actually hoping they go the way of the Whigs, that they just become more and more irrelevant because more and more people are leaving the party in droves.
Yeah.
So at some point, I mean, in Florida alone, there are 860,000 more Republicans than Democrats. And then there's even more no parties, no NPAs, right? So the Democrats are getting irrelevant.
Wow. Yeah, Florida used to be a swing state, and it doesn't seem to be that way now. Well, that's a good question. What do you think assuming for the moment they don't go the way of the Whigs immediately? Yeah. Where do they go? I mean, because it doesn't seem like there's any kind of honest soul searching. I mean, if you listen to Joanne Reed, we were blameless. She ran a flawless campaign. She even had Queen Latifah backing her in this.
Right. Obama condescending to a room full of black men wasn't a wrong direction, or Clinton telling a room full of Muslims, "Oh, sorry, we have to kill your people." But Israel. No, their campaign was flawless. The
campaign was flawless. She did great running around with Liz Cheney because that's so invigorating to Democrats, right? Not even lefties, just Democrats. It's just outrageous. But I came to the conclusion that they really believe that people like endless wars. And they really think that people meaning from their point of view, they seem to be shocked that they lost. And I'm like, why are you shocked that you lost? You didn't offer anything. Meaning, their lens of Donald Trump is such that they believe that because Kamala Harris attacked him, because she said bad things about him, that should have been enough to win. Missing the fact that campaigns are more than just you pinning your opponent. It's also you showing what you want to do for the country itself. So I guess my question is, if indeed they don't fully grasp the gravity of the loss and why they lost, are they going to make any adjustments or changes? Where does the party go from here?
So I think that the party does exactly what they continue to do, which is double down in their corporate elitism, because at the end of the day, they're serving capital. And when we say people were surprised, like the people that were really surprised to me either are acting or they really do not, or they really are not understanding what's going on here. But people at the top of the Democratic food chain, they know the drill. They know, like, I don't think they're surprised, and I don't think they're going to change because they don't care. They're going to suck as much money out of the whole entire industry as they can. And I don't know if you saw the numbers as to how much that campaign spent.
Yeah, over $1 billion by ourselves.
And they're in the whole 20 million.
I know.
Okay. So, okay. And so did you see how much of that she spent on staffing?
Well, I saw two numbers on staffing. One, I saw that was $56.6 million, but I saw another one that was much higher than that. Well, what's the number on the staffing part?
My understanding, from what I saw, it looked like $500 million was spent on staffing. And and here's the thing. So what Trump's campaign raised like 380 million. 400 million and spent less. So they're not in the red, whatever. But he spent like somewhere between 10 and $11 million on staffing. So when you think about this, the Democratic Party is a grift. And I say this not just in the electeds, but the whole system that surrounds it. And I call it the WCCC. It's not the DCCC. This is a WCCC. It's white collar campaign carnies. And these people, and in the Democratic Party, they don't even have to win. That's the thing. They keep hiring like 10-time losers. In the Republican Party, they only hire winners. So, and they're more smart about that. But the Democrats, man, it's a grift. These people, her campaign was how long? She raised that much money. She spent that much money on stuff. I guarantee you she had consultants on her campaign, people that damn well knew they had no chance of winning. I guarantee you they knew they had no chance of winning. And they were perfectly fine making probably like 15 to 20 grand a month on that campaign.
Wow.
And this is an industry. I call it the WCCC, and people do not realize that this is a huge part of why campaigns go on so long, why people run campaigns they know they can't win. Florida Democrats, that's their bread and butter. Is that. And so what you get is this certain class of like sycophants, succubi that basically feed off of the industry. And they don't care if you win or lose.
Because you ran in a race. You've running more than one election, especially against Deborah Wasserman Schultz. What's the consultant thing like? Like, because I've heard this before, that the consulting class is almost like a parasite on the political space in the way that they deal with campaigns. And even Hillary Clinton campaign, when Hillary Clinton was running, what is the Clinton Fund or Foundation? That was a job thing. That was like a jobs program. Those people were going to move from that to the White House under Clinton's model of running that stuff. How does that stuff work? Like, what's the internal mechanics of the consultancy class in the context of elections? I don't understand.
It's disgusting, really. So basically, there are people that it's like any other industry. It really is like any other industry where they're going to give the contracts to their friends. So or maybe it's even a business that you're somehow affiliated with. Then there's people that double dip. I know campaigns where the campaign manager was being paid, but so was her consulting firm at the same time. So it's basically, and sometimes the candidates are with it at the federal, like when you're talking those people, like the national people, they're totally with it. The people that are running Kamala's campaign are people that Hillary Clinton wants to give money to and transfer money to. It's a wealth transfer. And it's basically whoever's in charge of the money. So who's in charge of the Democratic national money? Who's in charge of their party money? It's the Clintons. They bailed them out. Debbie Wasserman Schultz bankrupted them. The Clinton Foundation basically bought the Democratic National Committee. Right. And so the person who's in charge of the money is who's in charge. So every campaign is a huge profit maker for them, for their friends, for their entire operation. Basically, like what you were just saying, the Clinton Foundation, think of the white collar campaign carnies. They're all groups like that. And they bring in people, and I am not going to name names, but if you go back and look at some of these campaigns, the same people that were involved in running them, that move from campaign to campaign, that are getting fired from this one and showing up at that one, it's an industry. and they work with each other until they have some sort of falling out, and then they go sycophant to someone else. And it's disgusting. But, this is like the military industrial complex with Dick Cheney when he was vice president and he's making money with Halliburton left and right. This is all capital. And the Democratic Party, and this is what should concern people, is to realize how much money they make even when they lose, especially when they lose. And so this is one of those, because now they get to say, well, none of it's our fault. We can't get anything through. We're not in office, but please send us money so we could fight these evil Republicans. So I think a lot of them at some level prefer being in, I think people like Nancy Pelosi prefer having someone like Donald Trump as president. I do. I think they prefer it. I think that it makes their life easier. They don't have to have excuses for not getting anything done, and they get to fundraise like it's nobody's business. The insider trading is still off the charts, regardless of who wins. And people like her, that's what it's about. This is about their portfolios and their friends. That's what this is about. And the entire election campaign industry is that. It's a grift. It's a grift. Because if it wasn't, we would have 3-month election cycles and publicly financed campaigns. End of story.
But see, look, I agree and disagree. It's because I don't think anybody wants to lose a campaign. I don't think anybody wants to lose, per se. I think all things being equal, they want to win. I agree with you. It's a grift. I mean, Bloomberg, I remember Blake was telling me about
who
Bloomberg.
Wants to win. The candidate wants to win. But the people that are necessarily in their party that are now going to have to go be in the legislature kind of prefer to be the minority party. Maybe they don't want to win. I wouldn't be surprised if Biden and his family voted for Trump.
Well, that's what people I want to show you this video for a moment because I was laughing my ass off at this particular clip.
Yeah.
And they were saying that Biden, wait a minute, let me see if I can find it. Where is it? All right, have you seen this?
I'm not sure. Wait, what? Oh my God, it's so bad. Oh, it's brutal.
Let's see if I can
That's
find this
brutal.
He's like walking, and then he turns and he's just.
That is the creepiest. Oh my God.
I love that clip. I love that clip. Because what they were saying, they were trying to make this case that Joe Biden voted for Trump. Like Joe Biden wanted Kamala Harris to lose because he was spiteful and they kicked him out. And they were showing how happy Joe Biden was after the election. He was like jogging to the podium. He was laughing with the kids. And they're like, okay, Joe, you seem really excited right now after she lost that race. Because I think Joe Biden probably would have thought, I would have won. I would have licked her.
Maybe, but I also think he's demented. But I do think that the people that profit the most from the campaigns, okay, forget who wins, like that whole industry, I assure you, they don't care who wins. They really
for them it's a job, right? And maybe
completely.
I think they care in the context of being able to say, look at our record of success.
Only on Republicans. The Democrats continue to hire loser after loser after loser. Like you can lose every campaign you've ever run, and you will be the first campaign manager that a lot of the Dems will call to run your campaign.
Tell me how this works. So let's say I want to run a political campaign. I'm Bob Cobb. And as Bob Cobb, there's a pothole in my street I don't particularly like. So I want to go to Congress and I want to do something because I think the money needs to be spent somewhere else. I register as a Democrat. All right. So what happens then? Do I get a consultant? Do I myself, how do I start and initiate this campaign if indeed I'm going to run? Because at some point, a consultant shows up in that process.
Oh, yeah.
So how does, what is the point with that consultant knocks on the door, comes into the house and says, hey, I'm going to win your campaign for you, or I'm going to win this thing? Or do you reach out to the various consultants? How does that work? I'm trying to understand this relationship.
Okay. So it really depends on a couple of things. So first of all, when you say you're going to run, first, my question would be, is there an incumbent? And is the incumbent a Democrat? So in other words, are you running in a primary and challenging a sitting Democrat of their own party? Are you challenging someone within your party?
I see.
Versus, is this an open seat or are you running against a Republican? Now, if you're running against a Republican and you are like somebody that is sort of known in your local party, your party committee, your local whatever, then chances are they'll help you and support you if they like you and want to help you beat the other person, right? However, if you're like me and you're running against an incumbent of your own party and you're challenging them in the primary, the entire machine will shut down against you and block you and close you out and not give you the time of day. So it's very different. Like if you were running as a Democrat somewhere where they were trying to beat a Republican and they liked you, then they would call consultants. They would call people they know. They would start helping put a campaign together for you and start fundraising for you.
So they
and
choose.
the machine would work for you, right?
So the machine chooses effectively. I mean, what was the guy named?
People who bring in the money,
Yeah.
what would happen is they would say to you, some people in that Dem club would say to you, you know what, Jamara, we've got these great people. They know what they're doing. They know the area, and we're going to, we'll bring them in for you and da-da-da. And these are the people that are raising money for you. So you're gonna basically let them kind of, and you may or may not, probably not, most people don't know what you're doing because you're first now doing this. So you're depending on your party infrastructure. So they will inevitably bring in their friends and cronies. That's what will happen. Now, if you're like me and you're running an insurgent campaign against the party incumbent, it's different because now I have to be reaching out to so many different people, trying to find people to help me. And you will find locally, like if you're challenging a local sitting incumbent in your party, none of the local people will help you. None of them will help you. None of the local fundraisers, none of the local media people, none of the local people are going to help you. So you end up bringing people from outside.
So when AOC beat that guy in New York, I can't think of his name right now.
Crowley.
Thank you. When he beat Rowley, I mean, she would have
Crowley.
Thank you. She would have had to go through a similar process. Meaning she would have had to start off at the very beginning because nobody thought she was going to win. Like they thought she had no chance.
But she was recruited by Justice Democrats. And she started with a basis and a foundation. It just wasn't the party infrastructure. It was its own thing. You see what I mean? She started with an infrastructure in place because they recruited her. You had Jank and Kyle and people like that had influence and fundraising ability. Rainmakers behind the scenes that were able to raise money to help her. So she wasn't coming out of nowhere. If she was really coming out of nowhere and she really had to do like, let's say what I did and just sort of start off talking to people and figuring out how do you do this, whole different story, which isn't to say she might not have won. I don't know. I'm just saying she had infrastructure.
Oh, this sucks. Because what that means is, what it sounds like you're saying is the party apparatus chooses. And to back that up, do you remember it was a leaked audio? I think this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where the guy was in the race. He was running against one of the candidates. The Democratic Party did not want the guy to run.
Yeah, it was Steny Hoyer. Hoyer.
Thank you. Yeah, and Hoyer basically tells the guy to get out the race. We've already chose who we want to run in this race. And I listened to that audio and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the brain trust of the party is choosing all across the country who they want and who they don't want, and excluding effectively who they don't want while raising who they do want, which means that there's a brain trust that is in the context of the political apparatus in regards to who is getting into the spot. And it explains why the Democratic Party on some level is the way it is. It's almost like there is some contingent, some coalition of thought that gets spread out all throughout the country in regards to the candidates who they choose to run in those races. And that needs to change. And I don't know how that changes under this model. I really don't.
I don't think it does in the Democratic Party. They are, and if you notice, like the average age of people, like they're not getting young people. No. The Republicans are getting some young people. Mostly young people are registering no party. But I will say locally in Broward. Now, Broward County is the bluest county in Florida. Okay. So even though Florida is, and Broward is a blue county, I will say that I do not see very many young people coming up in like the young Democrats, whereas Broward young Republicans, they're happening. They are packed. They are having parties. I'm just saying, like, I see it because I follow both groups. Right.
Yeah.
And the Republicans are growing and growing and growing, and they're reaching different demographics. Democrats don't. And specifically, I can speak to my district. They do not want to hear from the young people. They don't. They don't
No.
give a crap about the young people. They really don't. So that they're going to die off, literally and figuratively.
Deborah Wasserman-Schultz's comment that time where they were asking her about bringing in people to run. And she was like, well, the entire purpose of superdelegates is to prevent randos from getting into the election, to the race.
Yes.
She's like, we don't want
it's to make
anything
sure we
take
don't
place.
have to listen. We don't, she said, she goes, we don't want to have to, we don't want people at the grassroots to be able to decide.
Uh-huh. Think about that.
The Republicans are more democratic. The Republicans are more democratic. I will say that about I don't agree with their policies, but they don't bully each other in primaries. They don't do that. They don't do that locally. I've not seen that now. I mean, the candidates, yes, but you don't see the party other than not wanting Trump. They really do. They don't have super delegates.
I think the reality of it is, and what it boils down to is the center in American politics collapsed back in 2016 after Obama.
Yeah.
And the public itself wanted something fundamentally different. They didn't get the hope and change. Obama was just the gifted politician, which is the reason why he was able to hold the Democratic Party together during those two periods, even though it fell apart electorally. Like beyond Obama, what is it? Obama was running Obama for America. And it sucked all of the money out of the Democratic Party, in which case all of those other local races, governorships, and everything else went to the Republican Party. That is why Hillary Clinton was able to take control of the political.
But who was DNC chair?
Yeah,
who was DNC chair?
Yeah, Deborah Wasserman-Schultz was the chair at that point. And so it's like the center fell. The Republican Party ended up getting their insurgent candidate, Donald Trump, who was this outlier. And he wins because, again, the center fell, the center collapsed. And in the Democratic Party, because of superdelegates, because of the way that Clinton had control over the entire apparatus, they were able to stop their insurgent candidate, Sanders. So instead of getting this kind of Sanders-Trump race, which is what I would argue philosophically, ethically, morally, even from a standpoint of a country's choosing, is what they wanted.
It's what was needed. It's what was needed.
Yeah. We got establishment candidate versus anti-establishment candidate, and establishment candidate got whooped. Establishment candidate got whooped. Oh, this is so depressing.
But I mean, I think it is and it isn't, because I think we really need to have the understanding that any salvation, first of all, does not lie within the Democratic Party, but it really isn't going to come from electoral politics. This is something that is a major thing. Like, we're not going to vote our way out of this mess that we're in. That's not going to happen. And that's no matter who's in office. So there's so many other things like we need to be working on in terms of building up community resources and support networks so that we can at some point have general strike. I mean, because that's the ultimate goal, is to get everybody in yellow vests in the street and, just shut this shit down. But that's not going to happen through electoral politics.
Why do you think it's not as prevalent in America? I mean, if you look at France, France would shut that shit down in a heartbeat over pretty much anything. I remember I was in France, they were dragging cows onto the street to protest. It was like farmers. And they were bringing cows into the middle of the highway in order to shut the highways down. And if you're looking at, Amsterdam, they have those massive protesters out there now. We don't do that we would do it over police shootings, but we don't necessarily do it over economic issues per se. I don't quite get why.
We don't really do it for any duration because we don't have any social safety net. So the people in those countries, first of all, they have a lot more worker protections in terms of striking to begin with. Okay. A lot of those countries do. And then you also have countries that they don't depend on their employment for healthcare. These are people that just have a whole different social safety net. So it's less scary, I think, to be able to strike. And the other thing is there are less of them. We are talking about, smaller countries, but they are better to their workers. Their workers have infinitely more power in those countries. I mean, Scandinavian countries, they don't even have a minimum wage. They don't need a minimum wage because the unions are so powerful. So like these countries, their workers inherently have more power. Our people we're wage slaves. And literal slaves, depending. Like we don't have that power, and we don't have the social safety net.
Yeah, and a party that is supposed to be the party that believes in that stuff, delivers that stuff. I got to be honest, Sanders was a wake up call for me on so many levels. I mean,
Yeah.
in the first level, because, as an African American, and I can't say this is true for every Black person, but I know that we tend to vote Democrat. And in my household, it was kind of like, well, this is just what you do. It's, it's like breath to lungs. It's just when you go to the polls, you vote Democrat. It doesn't even matter who's necessarily on the ballot. It's not even all that important. You go to the polls, you vote Democrat. And when Sanders, and my thought was at the time, before I really got politically active, it was, okay, well, Democrats believe in healthcare, education. They believe in an increased minimum wage. They believe in expanding workers' rights. Those are the things that the Democratic Party believes in. So if you would have asked me, what does the Democratic Party stand for? I would have said those things.
Right.
The Sanders run, and I'm like, oh, that guy is those things. Meaning, if you're saying that those policies manifest in a person, an avatar of that stuff, that would be Sanders. And they've recoiled. And I'm like, okay, I am confused. If you're indeed those things, then you should be fine with that guy. But you're not fine with that guy. In fact, not just not fine with that guy, you do any and everything in your power to malign, get rid of, attack, etc. Okay, so maybe you're not those things. Maybe that's not really, it's what you say. It's not inactive what you are. And so, and then it was something else I became aware of. There's this argument that takes place in the Democratic Party that we're all together, meaning lefties and the more third way Democrats. That
the big tent.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big tent. You guys might be lefties. You guys might want all of this economic lefty stuff. And we don't fully believe in that stuff, even though we want to move forward, but we're working together and we're arm in arm. And under that model, though, that also means, so if we're together, that if I'm in a better position than you are in this election, then you're supposed to vote for me. Meaning if my candidate is stronger than your candidate, in the same way that I have to accept your Hillary Clinton, or I have to accept your Obama or whoever else that you put up, well, you have to accept Sanders, especially if it seems that he has the best chance, he has a coalition and everything else. Okay, well, they didn't believe in that, though. They weren't going to vote for Sanders. They were going to do anything in their power. When I heard Chris Matthews say, well, maybe it's better to let Trump win as opposed to give it to Sanders because he's going to take it for a generation. Okay, well, that tells me that we're not on the same page. You want us to back your person, but under no circumstances would you back our person if that person was in a prime position in your political party. That is an eye-opener. We're not on the same team. We're not together in this. You've conned all of these lefties into believing that we were. And I think that con fell apart after Sanders. I could be wrong on this. And I think part of the reason they're having such a hard time is because of what they did back in 2016. I could be wrong. Give me your thoughts.
No, there's never been a reckoning for that. And I do think that was a lot of people's wake-up call. But it's been a slow process. It wasn't overnight. I mean, it really, Bill Clinton was a lot of it. Bill Clinton was a lot of where you saw the party really separate from labor and really get in bed with corporate America. And really that's when, it got worse and worse and worse over time. And at the end of the day, I don't know that the Democrats were ever necessarily better. As much as that was sort of the fiction, the facade, but I kind of feel like the entire thing is a fiction. We're given one choice. Really, you vote for capital, and that's the thing. And
well, the capital thing is our political. It eats our system. And because I think part of the reason. Let me ask you this, and I'll close it on this one. The Democratic Party, I always say, are philosophically conflicted in running in our race. Because if indeed they want healthcare, education, et cetera, the only way you get those things under our current model is they have to go and they have to beg a rich person, give me money so I can run in a race and tell people and pass increases to your taxes and to get healthcare, education, and everything else. And you, as a rich person, is going to make less money. And I need you to give me money to go and make that argument. And those people tell the Democrats, I'm not giving you money for that. You better get out of here. In which case, how do they run under that model? In which case, that's the reason why Sanders ends up running under the model that he ran under. I'm not going to beg rich people for money. I'm going to be beholden to the working class. And this is going to be my funding mechanism to do so. So it's like, how does a Democrat really get elected and really push for lefty policies if indeed they're dependent upon rich people who don't believe or don't want those policies? And I strongly suspect that part of the reason that they decided to move and run to the right in the way that Kamala Harris did was for that very specific reason. I'm not beholden to anybody on the left. I don't have to give you anything. I don't have to promise you anything. The issue for this race is Trump. And as you pointed out, I believe, Clinton ran the exact same way.
Yeah.
Ran the exact same way.
It's the same thing. That's all they have. It's like, I feel like saying the 90s called, they want their politics back.
Yeah.
It's so old. It's so tired. But really both sides, both roads lead to the same corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if both parties are answering to military industrial complex, big pharma, big ag, fossil fuel, whatever, Wall Street, how would anything benefit the public? Like, this is why, to me, and I really do believe this, I believe that capitalism cannot coexist with an actual democracy. That's just me. Like, I do not think those things can really coexist. So when you take anything that should be a universal basic service or a public good, healthcare, education, whatever you put in that, right? And you make those things profitable. You put a profit motive on them. Right there, you have taken a universal public good and taken it from being a public good, right? So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And at the end of the day, Democrats are part of that capital system, and they want to feed their friends and their cronies just as much as they do on the right. The Democrats are just nicer about trans people, which I'm not saying isn't important, because it is important. But, if we're all suckling at the corporate teat, we're not going to get any of the things we want.
Yeah. Jen, I have enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy talking to you.
It's depressing. It's so depressing.
It is depressing. I mean, because I feel like the world shouldn't have to be this way. And we have found ourselves in this kind of weird organization where even trying to get the most basic of things. Like, for me, healthcare just seems to be basic. It's like, well, of course people should get healthcare. Or, of course I don't want people dying on the street or living on the streets. Why would I want that? And you're in a country that is spending like $1 trillion a year to kill people. And yet there's other basic services that you would think would just be inherent to life, not provided. It's just bizarre to me. Like, you can look, if they want to have their capitalistic thing, that should be isolated. If that makes sense. Like, there should be certain
non-essential goods, right?
Exactly.
Like, if somebody wants to charge however much money for a yacht,
have that,
man. Whatever. Right. That's how I feel too. Or a widget or a friggin' fidget spinner. You want to rip people off for small plastic crap, rip them off for small plastic crap.
But food,
you know what I'm saying?
Education,
but
healthcare,
they cannot not profitize everything. And that really, at the end of the day, and what people need to understand is that is neoliberalism. That is the entire premise of neoliberalism. Honestly, it's a really good quick read. Like, have you ever read any of Tom Hartman's hidden history books?
Tom Hartman is actually fascinating. I know he's
he has a series of books.
He's very bright. Yeah. I haven't read his books, but I used to watch his show all the time. He's very bright.
He has a series of books called Hidden History of. So hidden history of, just all different things. And they're really good. They're very smart. They're very concise. And one of them is the hidden history of neoliberalism in America. And that one was, and he really, regardless of politics, he really is a good writer and a good history person. And Tom's Tom's great people. And at the end of the day, he's a Democrat, I mean, it is, but he was one of the first people to really be out and proud about Bernie, and just always, so I have a lot of respect for Tom. But anyway, that series of books, and there's a bunch of them. Healthcare, hidden history of healthcare in America, hidden history of there's different ones. Very good. I highly recommend.
Jennifer Perlman. She's an attorney, activist, born and raised in South Florida, a community advocate, and two-time grassroots congressional candidate. Jennifer focuses on issues regarding social, economic, and environmental justice. She supports domestic policies such as universal health care, tuition-free higher education, and federal jobs guarantee. None of those things were run on by Kamala Harris. And maybe
those were my platform.
Those were your platform. Right. Jen, thank you for this. I really appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal. Always. Have a good one.
You too. Have a good one. All right, guys, we have come to the end of this show. I want to go over the chats before we close it out. All chats will be read. Go read the book, Green Wizard by John Michael Greer. It will answer the question as to how to beat the system without voting. Green Wizardry. I will look that up. Wizardry. I've never heard of that one. John Michael Greer. All right. What's next? Sir Bike Slap, thank you very much. Sparky, Jen, did Deborah Wasserman Schultz have her stooges, the Awan brothers, shoot Seth Rich? They weren't experienced, so Rich had to be finished off in the emergency room. I don't have an answer to that one. God, man, I haven't heard that name in so long, Seth Rich. LEJJ USA. I'm not saying anything new. JFK told us. JFK said a lot. They put a bullet in him for it. President Jafar. If Kamala Harris is that bad at campaign finance, what would she do with the economy? Bullet dodged, in my honest opinion. $1 billion pissed away. $1 billion. That's so much money. Can you imagine raising $1 billion and you raise it in 3 months and you spend it all? In 3 months, you piss away $1 billion. They basically burn that money on the White House lawn. She could have given all of us $100,000 and the world would have been far better off as opposed to just burning it on the White House lawn in the way that she did. And by the way, this is the second time she's done this. If you remember in the primaries, Kamala Harris ran out of money in the primary. I read that thing the other day where she was like, I am out of money. I don't have enough to keep going in this campaign. And people were saying she was being somewhat extravagant. She was arrogant. Apparently, she couldn't keep her campaign staff. And you could see some of that stuff leak out even over the campaign trail and the things that she said and the way that she comes across. So bad with money, $1 billion pissed away, $1 billion. And what do they have to show for it but the stupid looking t-shirt? Malik says, Anastasia Beaverhausen. Malik says Gaetz is the worst pick for Trump, which is wild. Trump has appointed so many rabid Zionists. Hashtag make Israel great again. Swamp is filled. Anastasia, the swamp is filled is an understatement. I show you that other lunatic, that sociopath that worked on Fox News that he's bringing onto his team. Yeah, all of these people, every last one of them are hardcore Zionists. If they want to murder and slaughter each and every Palestinian, these people would be perfectly okay with it, Rubio included. So, yeah, I don't have any feelings about Gaetz as the attorney general position. I know Malik doesn't like him. I think part of that is because he got rid of McCarthy. Gaetz tends to be a loudmouth. But by the same token, again, I have very low expectations for this administration. I am shocked at how obsequious Donald Trump has been to Miriam Adelson, that part. But again, $100 million apparently buys you a lot in Trump's world. Fuzzy balls. Biden intentionally sabotaged Democrats by endorsing Kamala right after he was forced to resign. Come on. That's not sabotaging her. In fact, I would argue that he even tried to help her campaign at the very end with the whole, 30 days for the humanitarian aid. We might do something different. Okay. I guess the issue is nobody actually believed it. Sparky, different from channel to channel, but certain phrases or words aren't allowed in super chats. So I had to use deleted. Oh, I see. Depends on the context too. AI and algorithms ever. Sparky, thank you. I hate this woke shit. People, the idea that you can't use the word suicide, because I know what you're talking about. Many YouTube channels have started to delete it because they demonetized the channel the moment that you said that stuff. I would wager to you this video would be demonetized. Many of these videos are demonetized. I guess the thing is, I hate that woke shit. Human beings, and part of the reason that Democrats lose is because of stuff like this. Like at one point now, YouTube even has, what are your pronouns? Okay. I hate that stuff. I don't think most people are that ideological. Meaning, I don't think most people are that wed to their ideology where they said suicide. Oh my God, I'm going to fall apart. Yeah, I don't get it. This stuff is part of daily life. They're acting like just because you sanitize it online, that all of a sudden somehow it's not going to be indicative of reality. Fact of the matter is, it's online because it is part of reality. It's not one creating the other. One is being talked about because it exists in the real world. No, but fair enough. I'm sorry. I feel you on this. I don't think people think this way. That's all. Sparky, when I was a kid, these Christian extremists called Jews, Zionists, or otherwise Christ killers. Israel has put a ton of money towards outreach to these folks and changed them. They full well believe that that the church of something is going to be built in Israel and Jesus is going to return, and they're going to slaughter half of the world's population and take the 2% of Christians up to Jesus to be on his side and suckle on his pinky toe. They believe this stuff. And fair enough, you can believe whatever you want, but I don't want those sociopaths in offices or positions of authority with those beliefs. I mean, it's terrifying. Fuzzy Balls. The one thing Tulsi has been consistent on, despite her opposition to Islamic terrorists, is her opposition to regime change wars. Yes, and proxy wars. Is she perfect? No, but she's better than 90% of DC. Fuzzy Balls agreed. 1000% agree. She has been very consistent that we need to stop knocking over these governments. We're killing people all across the globe. And Tulsi Gabbard was one of the key people who pointed out we got 500,000 people killed in Syria because Obama wanted to overthrow the Syrian government. She's right. She's right. She's not wrong. So, no, you're not going to find anybody who's perfect, including, myself. Everybody's flawed. But from the standpoint of this kind of position of we need to stop this slaughter and killing, yes, she's far better than many, like 90% of the other people who are there. And I know Brave, that's Brave's girl. I know he likes Tulsi, but I like her too. I don't hate Tulsi. Trump seems to think that he can play good cop, bad cop with his appointments, but it's even less effective now than it was in the first term. I don't know. I mean, these seem like all bad cops. The only good person that it seems to be in this administration is Tulsi. I don't know anybody else in this administration I would consider to be a, quote, good cop. John Ratcliffe. I like Ratcliffe only because Ratcliffe is a UFO guy. And there's several UFO people in this. Marco Rubio, Ratcliffe. I want to say Kristi Noem, but I'm not certain about Kristi Noem. They're making Ratcliffe CIA director, which is, again, mind-blowing considering the position that he's taken on some of these UFO things. Trump is saying he's going to open the JFK files. He's saying he's going to open the UFO files. We'll see. I don't know. He had the opportunity to do it the first time around. He didn't do it. Janice Anderson seems like every lie Jay says pushes her hairline back. Not going to talk about that woman's physical features. Zionists and Jews are not the same. No, they are not. That's why it's so dangerous passing legislation against First Amendment rights and criticizing Zionism because it is a political ideology. Just like Nazism, it can be criticized. These, I don't know how to pronounce that word, ethnologists like Pompeo, Bolton, Huckabee, and Hegseth are nuts. Yes, Israel likely installed Hegseth in the Princeton, then at Fox News because of his beliefs. He hopes he someday would be of use. See, I don't buy that. From my point of view, look, there are 320 million people in this country. There's going to be a percentage that are going to be like Hegseth, and they're going to be nuts. They would have found that sociopath in any of these scenarios and found a position to put that sociopath in. If it wasn't Hegseth, but it was Bob Cobb, then Bob Cobb would be in a position espousing the very similar things, if not the same things, that Hegseth or Huckabee or Pompeo are saying. I guess I'm saying there's a dime a dozen. You don't necessarily have to install anybody. They'll bubble up. LJ, Zionists own Israel and the USA. I don't know if it's the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail. It's very possible that all of the stuff that Israel is doing is just U.S. policy. It's a colony. We're defending our colony. We like the fact that Israel is expanding and creating a presence in the Middle East, especially if we ever lose track of the Middle East, which seems like we're doing now because of what Israel is doing. Saudi Arabia, Israel, Syria, all of these countries have started to organize together, and there's a question about whether or not they're going to change the context on the ground because of the number of people that are being slaughtered and murdered by Israel. So, this may backfire in real terms. They have utterly, look, man, don't get it twisted. We could be going into some really horrible stuff whether that was Trump or whether that was Joe Biden. And part of the terror with Trump is that he is not going into the same world that he left. He is not, he may be buddies with Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is not trying to have a war with Iran. And at this point, those countries have started to organize with one another. Syria has been brought back into the fold. Saudi Arabia has been back into the fold. They're having organizations and meetings about what they're going to do about Israel. Trump, I have no idea how he fits into that. And if he goes with this notion that he's going to somehow attack or ramp up on Iran, okay, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I mean, same thing with Ukraine, right? He has no capacity to change the context on the ground in Ukraine short of using nuclear weapons. And again, that is terrifying. United States of Israel, Anastasia Beaverhausen, yeah, a president is a Manchurian candidate. The idea that you can give somebody $100 million and then they get in office and basically do the bidding of a foreign power is traitorous, to put it mildly. Sparky would love to have seen Tulsi as Secretary of State. Same here, despite ostensibly being a Zionist. I think that mostly comes from her Indian husband. She used to not be so anti-Muslim despite being a soldier. Well, she is a big fan of Modi. There's this kind of weird Hindu-Muslim dynamic that goes on in India. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Owners, as December 23rd, 1917, loves war. Yes, they do. Jamal, great work as always. Keep on trucking. Sparky, I'm doing my damnedest. I'm trying. Thank you for your help. Sparky, the establishment coalition, which beat Trump in 2020, didn't have Israel's full support towards the end of 2024 election without Israel's influence, and intended false fortification fell too short. I don't agree with that. I mean, Thomas Massie didn't have Israel support. He ended up winning his race. And truth be told, the overwhelming majority of the American public would have been perfectly okay with her changing the language in regards to what she was going to do towards Israel, because the overwhelming majority of the American public saw it as, at the very least, that Israel was going too far, if not even considering a genocide. So that was self-imposed. It's kind of like Obama, right? Where they used to say, a black man, you could be a president that just so happens to be black, but you can't be a black president. Well, Obama took that to heart. And what I'm realizing in watching Trump, or for that matter, watching Obama, is the American public gets used to whatever political leader it's there. And so the excesses no longer become excesses. It becomes just kind of accepted as that's who that person is. The same thing would have been true for Obama. Same thing would have been true. My point is, Harris wasn't stuck in her position. She took that position. And considering they lost the House, Senate, and the presidency, then what worse could have happened, right? Like, the model to which she ran by failed on a massive fucking level. She lost, and they lost it all. So what would it hurt her to say, I'm moderating my language on this issue of Gaza and Palestine? Would she have potentially been able to win Michigan? Maybe. Would she have lost anything from doing that? Well, how could she have lost anything? She lost everything already. It was only a net positive. So that's my take anyway. Bibi knew, despite Kamala or Joe being just as pro-Israel as Trump, he squeezed all the juice out the orange, so Israel went with Trump, presuming that the U.S. would be partly rejuvenated with more juice. Yeah, and I suppose he probably fully well believed that Donald Trump was going to give him any and everything that he wanted. And looking at the list of dingbats and kooks that Donald Trump has put on his administration up to this point, it looks like Bibi might have been right. Just think about that for the moment, though. Your name is Joe Biden. Israel goes on a killing spree, killing tens of thousands, up to over 100,000 human beings, most of which being women and children. You bitch about it, you gripe about it, you complain about it behind the scenes, and yet you give him a blank check to do whatever he wants to do. And you get humiliated in one instance after the next, where it becomes super clear that A, you're not being listened to, B, they're still going to take the money, the weapons, everything else that you give him, but he's not going to give you anything back for it. And politically, he is going to try to make you look bad over and over and over again, which is exactly what Netanyahu was able to do to humiliate Joe Biden one instance after the next. And Kamala Harris runs in a race and still sticks with the same policy, same point of view all the way through. and loses, and then loses. Got nothing out of it. You just got humiliated. You could have taken a different tact on all of these issues. And for all of these people saying she ran a flawless campaign, you're out of your goddamn mind if you really do believe this was a flawless campaign. And Jen is right. If you really believe that, then your party should have lost, and you should go the way of the Whigs. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I want to thank all of you for giving likes, sharing the content, subscribing to the content. Or for that matter, giving to the show. All of it helps maintain this particular program Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Lawrence Wilkerson, I'm sorry. It's going to be here on Monday, by the way. It's going to be here on Monday. That should be a damn good conversation. You guys have a phenomenal day. Signing off. Thanks, guys. Thank you, President Jafar. Thank you for joining me with it.